I'd like to get started. Carrie,
You're recording.
we're recording? Great. Thank you everyone for attending this meeting. We'll go through the agenda. There should be agendas you have. Most of this meeting is a regular meeting. There is an item on the agenda for public comment. If members from the public would like to talk, it's like the regular Common Council meeting. You can go to the podium, give your name, and share your message in a respectful way. And then we'll continue with the agenda at the end after we adjourn. There will be a Q&A session too for anyone who would like to stay. So what we'll do is you can ask us questions and we'll try to answer those questions to give you the most amount of information you need.
Will that be recorded?
Sorry?
Will that ending be recorded?
Yes, it will be recorded. Yep. And so at this point, let's start with the agenda and the roll call. Commissioner Osterhout.
Present.
Commissioner Shields.
Present.
And Commissioner Kamerbeek also present. We have some of our Common Council members here too. We have our FBO operator Matt Kent here too, and our airport liaison Len Carson. Thank you all for being here. So that concludes the roll call. Approval of the minutes. We have minutes from May 21st, 2025 that we have to approve. Anybody want to make the motion? Have you read the minutes? Any questions?
I'll make a motion to approve. Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Approved. Correspondence. We've received two letters. One letter from Common Council member Scott Harrington. I'll read that letter. To the Airport Commission, subject concerns regarding recent communications and project conduct. Dear members of the Airport Commission, I am writing to express my serious concern regarding your recent communications to property owners in the vicinity of the airport. The content and tone of that communication was not only inappropriate and misleading, but also showed a complete lack of concern and transparency in how this matter is being handled. Most troubling is the unprofessional inclusion of language implying that land may be taken through eminent domain. This implication is both misleading and unnecessarily alarming, particularly as the Airport Commission does not have the legal authority to initiate such proceedings. Raising the possibility of eminent domain in a letter without context or legal grounding has understandably caused fear and confusion among residents, and it undermines the public trust in the Commission. Furthermore, the handling of the tree removal process has raised additional concern. It has become more evident to me that significantly more trees are being removed than originally communicated and appears to be unnecessary. This lack of clarity and failure to consult and adequately inform affected property owners undermines the credibility of the project and raises serious concerns about the environmental and community impact. The absence of clear justification suggests a disregard for both ecological considerations and the concern of the residents. Therefore, I respectfully request that the Airport Commission takes the following actions. Issues a formal correction and clarification addressing the inaccurate and misleading statements regarding eminent domain in the initial letter as well as any follow-up correspondence. 2. Conduct and publish transparent review of the current scope of tree removal, including a clear explanation of the rationale supporting data and environmental impact assessments. 3. Implement improved community engagement to ensure accurate, timely, and respectful communication with residents in future projects and how this will be carried out. Residents deserve transparency and professionalism from any public entity whose action directly affects their property, safety, and quality of life. I urge the Airport Commission to address these issues promptly and take corrective steps to restore public trust and accountability. Thank you for your attention in this matter. I look forward to your timely response and to seeing clear corrective actions taken. Sincerely, Scott Harrington. Then there is does anybody want to comment? Any of the commissioners want to comment on this?
Just that we did respond, requesting the letter, which he referenced, and he was unable to provide a letter.
Yeah, and it is clear that as an airport commission, we have a duty to further the airport, to make sure that we remain in compliance. However, the way we would like to do that is in a professional, respectful manner. If any members of the public have received letters too that are unprofessional or deemed unprofessional, please forward those to us and we will review those. We take that very seriously. And then the second correspondence we have from the Anianta Police Department via Greg Matthijs for the request to use the airport. It was addressed to Sergeant Catapano. I would like to connect you with Martin Kamerbeek and Justin Osterhout from the city's Airport Commission, as well as Matt Kent, who is the city's contracted airport manager and fixed-base operator. I've shared with them your request to utilize the airport taxiway and runway again this year for OPD Emergency Vehicle Operations Course training. In summary, the request is as follows. Shooting for either the week of the 6th or the 13th in October, 4-hour training sessions twice per day, 8 a.m. to noon and noon to 4 p.m. for 3 days. Each session would utilize the taxiway for the first approximate half of the session and then require use of the runway for the second half. The Airport Commission's role include oversight of all airport operations, and I believe they plan to consider your request at the next Commissioner meeting at 4 p.m. on Wednesday, August 20th. I've contacted the FAA to see if we are allowed to do this. And they came back. We would have to file a formal plan with them that includes a safety plan and an understanding of what exactly is being done, but also with a side note that they do not support this type of activity at the airport, especially for the duration that was listed. We'll be working with the Anianta Police Department to see if it can be reduced to what the FAA requested is Saturday morning and the inclusion of a safety plan. Any comments?
Other than
All right. Then we concluded our correspondence, so then we can move into public comment. If any member of the public would like to speak, please do so. Please state your name and keep it to 3 minutes, please.
Would you like to see the letter?
Yes, could you forward that to me after this meeting? I don't know if do we want to read this now? Do we want to read this after the meeting?
They're all the same. You're welcome to read it right off my phone. Or I'll forward it to yourself, whatever you prefer.
Sure.
What would you like?
Yeah, if you could forward that.
Email or phone?
Phone is fine, 607-437-0110. Does anyone from the public would like to provide public comment?
That's 0110.
Yes.
Has there been more than one letter? I've only gotten one letter and I heard there was 2 letters.
Only one that I'm aware of.
My name is Randy Maritello. I live at 1170 Kelly Corners Road, and I just want to, I think for myself, I'm here really today to just hear what the airport commission has planned. So up till now, we've been misled, to put it nicely, about what the scope of this project is. Thank you, Matt is such an egomaniac that he would stop by our properties unannounced to let us know what was going on. So I appreciate that. It's been good because it's really kind of sounded the alarm for us. And I think for myself, I have zero trust in this commission at this point. And so I don't know how I can move forward working with the people that are on this commission at this point. And if you have some sort of sales pitch that you can sell on me that I should forfeit my property, that this is going to be some economic benefit to the community, and I should forfeit my property to do that, I would love to hear that sales pitch, because I think it's going to be a really hard sell for me. So far, I have not seen anything that adds up to what you're saying it is. I have questions about, I'm curious to know when who the new fuel tank bidder is. Is that going to be made public? I saw in the last minutes that there's a new lowball bid for the fuel tanks, for the fuel station, for the fuel farm, right? So, I mean, will this stuff be made public of who that person is that has the tanks? Or, I mean, this is public, right? This isn't the Oneonta Airport Club. This is supposed to be a municipal airport. So the transparency up till now has been bullshit, honestly. And I know I'm tired of it. I've lost so much time from work, like reading about the FAA, trying to like figure out what the hell's going on here. You know what I mean? It's like, how do I get this time back? You know, my property values, right now, like if I wanted to sell my place right now, who's gonna wanna, not that I do, but I'm just saying, hypothetically, you know, right now, what's my property worth now that the Oneonta Airport's coming for my property? So, I mean, it's like, if you can justify this to me, that this is worth it, then this is your chance to try and do that. But as for right now, I have zero faith in this commission. And I really don't see a path forward in my eyes with working with you. And so I'm sorry for that, because the city council actually has been very forthcoming. And I appreciate the effort that they've made to try and kind of, I don't know, smooth this over or be honest with us about what's going on here. But the commission itself has been way less than that. So this is your show.
Thank you, Randy. Anyone else?
Good afternoon, Commission. My name is Patricia Bailey. Address is 4417 Contenta Ridge, Santa Fe, New Mexico. I am a joint landowner with my parents, Robert H. Bailey, Francine S. Bailey, 57 acres. Our property is located on the west side of your airport. To date, as of today, we have never been notified of any type of proposed actions. Our property is right behind your tower, and I come to find out that it's clear-cutted. What am I to do about it now? The damage has been done. So therefore, your transparency is not there. You owe the transparency, the communication, and the coordination with this community as a municipality. I concur with the statements of Councilman Scott Harrington. Please take his words of wisdom and recommendations under consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
You need to read the letter, and then you'll find out. Donna Stevens, 371 Airport Road, Oneonta. Our house has been the, holy Christ, what happened to your place? Screeching to the brakes, looks like a tornado went off.
That was before the 15 acres was cut off behind us. The way that the city and whoever allowed that log cutting to go on for those 6 projects, they need to be responsible to come back and clear cut it, because not only has the revenue been ripped away for the future of Oneonta, it looks terrible. And that's not, you have already drastically decreased, or whoever's involved has drastically decreased our value of our property. We had the 15 acres cut out back, and right next to us, right as we walk out our front door, has all been clear cut. That may not have been as necessary as they said, because they said, oh, we're just gonna top it. That's not true. I would much rather see every single piece of property that was logged, clear cut like that, so that way it can immediately start to regrow and start to have some sort of money for the future of Oneonta. It may not take, 20, 30 years, but at least you're not leaving it look like that. I really wish whoever's responsible, I would really like to see them fix it. We understand that the seeding that's been put in, which cost the company $6,000, it was really wet when they put it in. It was really cold. Are they going to come back and fix it? Yes, that's what we were told that they're going to do. That's great. But for us to be here today, any of us, and have to be told that they want to cut off more trees, and they could claim eminent domain, we've had enough. It's not necessary. Maybe having a tree or two topped out, fine. But personally, my husband and I, we're maxed. So if they think, oh, well, they're just going to hop up and move, well, hell can freeze over first. Because the airport many years ago already claimed eminent domain on my husband's grandmother. It's not going to happen again. And they're not going to clear cut on our property, and they're not going to clear cut on their property. We've had enough.
Thank you.
My name's Gil Terry. I live off of B. George Road. I've bordered the airport for 30 years now. I bought land from the Kelly brothers, who own Kelly Corners, the whole property. Their property had already been eminent domained when I bought from them. Matter of fact, it was a concern for being able to purchase because they were still contesting the event that happened to them. I've in the last 20 years have witnessed hundreds of acres being removed to my west and up the top of the hill. This is all wetland. Basically, this is the feed for the Oneonta Reservoir. I find the Oneonta water, the reservoir, the city's water supply is far more valuable than the Oneonta Airport, which serves, I don't really know anybody that has a plane, personally. Very few planes coming in and out of there. It's hardly used. You can't land a jet there when it's raining. I mean, is it really necessary? I mean, is somebody going to be transported by plane to go to Albany Med or wherever they're going to go? I don't think so. Probably be a helicopter, more likely. I've just watched 2 acres of wetland off of B. George be completely removed. Take years to redo this wetland. Now, if you look at the sight line, go up there, go on B. George. You'll see a hole now. I don't understand the safety issue, because if you're a plane, okay, you missed those trees. Well, there's a 4,000 volt power line that runs right there. Not a good ending. Also, the very end of the runway, like if you're approaching from that mountain, there's a 10-foot chain link fence that the whole end. So if you're short landing, you're screwed anyways. I mean, you're hitting a hill. I don't know. Name your options. It's not a safe airport. I wish you just guys get yourself under control. It's wetland. This is the main supply for the Oneonta Reservoir, the Susquehanna River. It's important. I'm an environmentalist. I take it very seriously. You guys are a nightmare.
Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jill Basile. I'm a City of Oneonta resident. I live at 19 Central Ave, and I'm also a county board member for Otsego County for Ward 7 and 8 in the City of Oneonta. So I just want to state that I'm not in favor of this project. The proposed clear cutting would take place or has taken place directly near two streams that feed into the city reservoir. And I'm deeply concerned about the long-term impact, not only as a taxpayer myself, but for every taxpayer in the City of Oneonta. If there's damage done to the water, who is going to pay to make that not happen? City of Oneonta taxpayers to clean up our water from this project. If the quality of our water is compromised, like I just said, it will ultimately be the taxpayers who will shoulder the cost of fixing that. Beyond that, the decision does not make us, the City of Oneonta, good neighbors. We have folks here who are not from the city, from Lawrence, the town of Milford, the town of Oneonta. I've spoken with many of these residents, and I've directed them to their proper county representative to also state their opinion to them, none of which is the City of Oneonta. So in my opinion, the city is not acting in good faith right now as neighbors to our community up at the airport. And I would just plead with residents of the city to reach out to their council members to let them know if they're in favor or not in favor of this project, because ultimately, if this project goes downhill, it's city residents who are going to have to pay for that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I just have a couple questions. I'm just interested in the composition of the commission, like who is supposed to be on it, where you all coming from, what's your interest in it, and how many is there supposed to be, and what's it supposed to consist of, and what are your reasons to be on the commission? I'm just unaware. I asked for a FOI recently, and I still got like 2 more weeks to get all the information on that. So I just want to be more aware of who you are and what you're up to.
Just for the record, we need your name and where
Oh,
you live.
I'm Kelly Miller. I live at 80 Ford Avenue, 80 Ford Avenue, Oneonta.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I think we can answer these questions at the end of the meeting. Happy to do so. Anyone else?
I guess what everybody's kind of noticing is that we've all lived near the airport for a long, long time.
Sorry,
And we've,
your name?
Laurel Shaw,
Laurel.
413 Mather Road, Oneonta, town of Lawrence. So we've all lived near the airport for a long time, and actually fairly peacefully. We've lived next to the airport. The major problem has come up since this extension of the runway has been proposed. That's what has created so much tension in this room. Had there been better communication, maybe there wouldn't have be so much tension. But that has scared everybody, upset everybody, made everybody angry. I'm not an aviation expert. I'm not an engineer. I'm not any of those things. But what I am an expert at is people. I understand people, and I understand people's relationships with their land, with their community, with their friends. That's why we're all here. Look at all these people. They're upset, they're hurt, they're angry, they're scared, and they've been stonewalled over and over and over. And I don't mean to say they, we, I. I live across the road from the airport. I barely know it's there. And I'm fine with that. I want a peaceful, safe, small, well-managed airport. No problem. I don't know if anybody else here would agree that that's the case. So why have we all lived there all these years? Because it's fine. What's not fine is extending the runway, threatening all of us, sending a letter. We have the letter. I'll be glad to read it out loud. It's very, very threatening, unnecessarily. So basically, what I hear people saying is, unfortunately, you all kind of created this. It's because we got blindsided, that's why we're here, trying to scramble to be heard now. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And we'll get back to
I know
the
you
topics.
will. I know you will. I do appreciate that. I know.
I'm Dr. Sweet. I live here in Oneonta. I've lived here over 40 years. I was chief of surgery at our local hospital for on and off for 20 of those years. I served Fox Hospital for 35 years. I'm quite concerned about my neighbors and friends. You've heard from the people that live right there that the airport has not been heavily used. She just indicated that she's lived there all these years, and, you know, most people that live near big airports, they're flying over all the time. I don't know what your use pattern is or what your expectations are. Nobody's explained those to us. But I don't see huge expansions happening within the town of Oneonta to warrant all of this. The clear cutting of hundreds of acres that have already been done to these people's property, if you continue and do the rest of it, you're going to have surface water runoff into our water supply. And that's the biggest contaminant of a water supply that there can be. And there's not going to be any way to stop it. And unless you can justify a reasonable reason for this project in the first place, it should not go on. If we try to look into the possible increased uses, Oneonta's largest employer for years and years were our colleges. The enrollment in our colleges is down, and it's expected to continue down. I don't see a huge need there. The second largest employer was Fox Hospital, and it's been decimated. It's hardly, well, I don't want to go there, but it's you can walk the wards and they're empty. And when I was there, we were fighting for beds just to try to help people. We even had UHS come in here, and they were an employer. And they were here, what, 5-7 years, something like that? I don't know for sure. But they've been driven away. I don't know where the expectation is for this huge expansion of an airport that's hardly used. And I think the environmental concerns and the concerns of my neighbors and friends are being totally ignored. And if you destroy our water supply, the rest is obvious. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Kim Pierce-Schwed. I live at, I have to get confused when where my mother lives, 640 Main Street in Oneonta. I am here representing my father, who is no longer alive, Ernest Sanders. He was my stepfather. I had lived at the airport. He married my mom in 1980, so I had lived in his place, which is at 340 Airport Road. I am here because I know that he would be furious that 6 acres of his land are cut, or scheduled to be cut. His land is now posted thanks to my neighbors, who pointed out the fact that my mom, who doesn't always check her mail, was getting a letter. I may not have known that this would be happening. Why do I care? Because I miss my father, and that land will be willed to me eventually, and I don't need it for that reason. It is beautiful land up there, and I know that Ernie would have been freaking out that you touch his trees, you touch his land, you touch all of that stuff. Not to mention all the wildlife that is up there. Of course, I know the wildlife is in the city. You have to avoid the deer just driving down Main Street. But the eagles that are up there, I have pictures of the eagles. And what has been done to my neighbors up by the airport to clear cut their whole entrance. It's like, what the heck happened here? And when I found out that it was done without their knowledge by someone from the city of Oneonta, it was shocking. And I still feel very bad for you guys on that. And I think, so I don't burst into tears, I think everybody touched on the wildlife, the water supply. You know, people go swimming in our lake there, and it's hard to keep them out of the water. Can you imagine the pollution, that runoff that would be going into that lake? And I still drink the water from the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would say one thing about what she's told. We did know about the clear cut right in front of our house. Clarify that.
Also, you know, this is not the first silting event. When you guys clear cut before, you made a hell of a mess. Fun silt into the trout stream. From the bottom of my driveway down, it's a trout stream. I'm not allowed to go in there with a tractor. I'm not allowed to touch it really. It's a trout stream. It's trout, the population's been decimated in the last 2 or 3 years from your logging operation. It's just unbelievable what you guys do. DEC wouldn't let me do a damn thing there. And you guys can just clear cut, do whatever you want. It's absurd.
Thank you.
Can I just touch on a few things?
Yes.
Okay, let me get quick. As far as the flight school, we totally support that. That's fine. It's bringing in younger people, new people, teaching them how to fly. We're fine with that. It's a good thing. The displacement of wildlife, we are 100% a target for that. We haven't killed anything. We have had the DEC come in and take them out so that we're not, an issue. But the city of Oneonta has been complaining about having more deer, having snipers come in, or hire, people supposedly qualified to come in and take out deer with a bow. Trying to figure out why. All these places that have been logged and all these places that have been clear cut, you've taken out a huge, huge food source. So they start to go someplace else. Well, they're gonna go where there's easy pickings or else an easy food source, and it's gonna be the city. Luckily, a lot of ours have stayed that we are aware of, because, we've watched them for so many years. But the other thing is, they're not here, so I'm gonna stick up for them. We just had Brandy neighbors buy a house in March. $460,000 house. She is a retired, oh, they are here, well, Gary, do you mind? Good. That's their retirement home. And Gary, would you say something?
Sure.
It'd be better for me. Thank you.
Yeah, we just bought the house in March, and it's called Gary Flaherty, 378 Airport Road. Our house is where all the planes fly over and approach. But we were not aware of anything when we bought the house. Whether we'd have bought it, if we knew it, I don't know. We love it up there. I grew up in the state of West Virginia. I went in the Army all my life, and loved the country. So my wife and I decided, we went out there on a Saturday morning, went on the market, and by noon we made an offering. We were so impressed. But we were unaware until the airport manager knocked on our door one Sunday start telling us about what the plan is. I called and spoke with the engineer, and she said, we'll make an offer to you. If you don't take it, we'll take it anyway. So,
Wow. That's one thing that I will make a comment on is the company that whoever, if it's the airport commission or whoever's going through it, company in Rochester, the woman that has spoken to them, because I haven't called and I will not call. She's been extremely rude. She told them that they would be bringing in big equipment. She also told them that they would never be allowed to replant. That they would take the trees off the front lawn and off both sides of their property and the back of their property. They have 4 acres. They would have nothing left but the fence that they just had put up.
that's correct. We have 3.75 acres, and the engineer lady told me they would take 3.25 acres.
Thank you. Anybody else who would like to speak?
Good afternoon, Bryson George. I've been an airline pilot for 45 years. I've just retired, so I've moved around a bit. But I was born in Fox Hospital, and my parents brought me up to Bryson George Road, and we still have that home. I was involved in the initial taking, although I was very young, when the airport was created. And so I've been up here now, and I'm a little confused, and maybe you can clear it up. There's a proposal to expand the runway, and that would involve clearing and construction, obviously. But there's a lot of clear cutting going on that doesn't seem to be involved with that expansion. It was 1 tree a minute all day yesterday on the west side of the airport. Big trees. So I'm just curious what your plan is with the trees on the existing property for the city of Oneonta, and if you have a plan to take trees that is not under the control of the city. I think everybody would like to know what the real plan is. That if there's one separate from this proposed expansion. So that's my only question.
Thank you. And we'll address that later in the meeting. Anyone else? Okay, then at this point we'll go to the topics for discussion. And we'll have topics for discussion, and we have new business, and then after that we'll do the Q&A. So for the topics for discussion, we'll start with the fuel farm. Maybe you can get an update on where we stand with that.
Do you want to do the FBO update with all these things?
Okay, so the fuel farm, for those who don't know, I'm Matt Kent. Now the employee, local with employee, I'm also the manager of the airport. The fuel farm, we managed to get, we have a purchase order in place for the 200 tanks. That purchase order was signed by the city. Can't hear me.
Is there a microphone?
That's okay, I'm not very loud. The fuel farm, the tanks have been, that project, well, all these projects are projects that were handed off, that have been projects in the work for many years, just so everyone knows. None of these are new. The fuel farm project is approximately 6 years old. There were some early delays, and those were warranted because when it was started in 2019, and COVID happened in 2020. So there was a lot of delays that happened around that time that could be justified. It was put out the bid came too high, so it wasn't accepted. It was put back out to be reworked, and it was reworked again. The bids were put back out again. It was too high again, so it was put out. It basically just sat there. So I came on board. First job is to try to pick up all the existing projects and try to get them to their conclusion. So we were able to find a way to purchase the tanks, to separate the project into a couple of phases so we could get it accomplished. This phase is, we've purchased a tank separately, that contract has been signed by the city. So they should be here sometime late in the fall or in the winter. And the second phase of that project is going to be pouring in the concrete, doing the site work, moving the fences, getting electrical run. The engineer just called about half an hour ago before this meeting, and I talked to the other person this morning about the specs on that. So hopefully sometime in the next month, those drawings will be together, and that will be able to put out to be bid to get the concrete for that. And the third phase of that project is the removal of the existing tanks. The whole project itself was basically spearheaded because the DOT doesn't like underground fuel tanks anymore. And 40, 50 years ago, it was very popular for people to bury fuel tanks in everything, from local town garages to places like the airport. Since then, they've decided and found out the hard way that that's not a good thing to do. So this was kind of spearheaded by the age of the tanks and the fact that they now like to have them replaced and above ground. They're easier to monitor. It's a better way to maintain all around. So the last phase will be removal of that. We're hoping that there's enough money left in the budget after the first two phases that we'll be able to accomplish the third phase. That's still up in the air until we get the quotes back from the second phase. As of now, that's kind of where that stands.
Thanks, Ben.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Any questions from the commissioners more about the fuel farm?
No, that answers my questions.
Okay. Then we'll continue with the AWAS, the Automated Weather Observation Station.
The AWAS project, again, is several years old. And the AWAS, and for people who don't know, it's a weather station. So all the FAA wants to have a weather station at your airports so that the pilots, everyone can monitor the weather at the location that they're going to. The weather station there is antiquated and has some problems with it. They're constantly being fixed, maintained, so a grant was received to replace that. The clear cutting that is referred to on the opposite side of the runway was actually part of that project. In order to have a weather station that's worthwhile to an airport, you have to have a radius of clear around the weather station so that the readings that it's taking are accurate. And that's usually about a 500-foot circle. So if you picture the area directly across from the runway, which I believe was abutting Bailey, am I correct in that?
That is correct.
That area in front of that, they need to have that area so that the readings that the weather station gets are accurate. What they're doing right now is they're cutting, the trees were cut down a year or so ago. A few remaining were done this spring, and now they're in there cutting the stumps away, grinding the stumps down to the ground so that they can be mowed. They're not really gonna pull all the stumps out, it's really just about getting them low enough so that a brush hog can go over them, so that the area can be kept low, so that the weather readings are accurate, and therefore safe for planes to come in.
Is that the whole area?
It's most of the area. It's, what they have to do is a 500-foot circle. So I haven't been out there to see exactly where that falls, but that's a lot of that area. All that area is on actual airport property. There was nothing cut off the airport.
That's a strictly on
They're
airport
working,
project.
they're working there now. They started, the equipment was actually ordered a while ago. They started the actual job of doing the clearing. They had to put concrete foundations in, do the wiring and get everything serviced. That's ongoing right now. And hopefully that AWAS station will be installed sometime later this fall.
Great. Yeah, and absolutely, we've had problems being able to maintain it. We have some parts that are in use today that are on loan from the company that supplies these.
The person who maintains them came and installed some parts, kind of as a favor, and said, I want these back, and you guys get the new station.
Commissioners, do you have any questions about the AWAS project? Alright. Then we'll continue with the on-premise clearance.
The on-premise clearance is the one that's most obvious to people at this point. The trees have been cleared down on 6 end, here at home. And clarify, that was all on airport property, that was not on your property.
When I was out of law.
Oh, I'm just clarifying.
I clarified.
Oh, okay.
We are.
Thank you. Okay. And early on in that, I believe, the request was to actually try to top some of those trees. And this applies to a lot of this project. So some of this is actually hopefully answers some questions that are going to develop anyways. I'm in the timber business, as has been pointed out. So I really know what I'm talking about in the tree business. And when it comes to trees in general, when we picture a tree that grows out on a lawn or in an open area, trees tend to grow like a bush. They'll have lots of limbs and they'll kind of look like a bush. And trees like that, certain types of trees you can successfully cut the top out of. Hardwood trees, they're still going to continue to grow if they can. Sometimes a softwood tree, you've seen nice acorn or things where they'll pop a tree off and kind of stub it and it won't grow anymore. But generally in the woods, the reason loggers log in the woods is because the competition among trees makes them grow as tall as they can. And when you cut trees in the woods, you get 30 or 40 feet with no limbs, sometimes more than that. And the limbs that are there are way up high because they're competing for sunlight. So if you top a tree at 30 feet high that's growing around a bunch of the trees, as the neighbors found out, you end up with sticks, just a bunch of sticks, because there aren't any limbs down below those trees. So that's where a lot of this issue is coming from. It's not about that there can't be trees, it's that the kind of trees that are grown there and the way they've grown there have gotten to such a tall canopy, something that wasn't a problem 20 years ago, 25 years ago, is a problem. And so the best remedy, even on the airport property, if you've noticed that they left the apple trees and they left some of those kind of trees there, it wasn't clear cut. Most of what was there was going to grow too tall. The types of trees that aren't going to grow that tall don't need to be removed. Because the canopy, there's a line, there's a visible line that goes out. And if it's going to get into that line, then it's obstructing the area. No different if a tree is going to grow across I-88. If it's going to get across that line, it's got to go. If it's going to be a certain distance away from that line, then it's okay. And it's kind of the whole thing. Because it's an invisible line, and because it's hard for people to picture it, it seems random, but it's not random at all. So the on-site obstruction project is basically done, but as she said, it was very wet this spring. So their job was to level it out, seed it, and make it so it could be mowed, so it's more like a field instead of like a forest. But it was so wet, it was kind of ruddy. So a percentage of the contract has been withheld, and they're supposed to come back. I think the latest notice was sometime the week after next, and then smooth out the remaining ruts so that we can effectively mow that area and make it look nice. Once that's done, that project will be done.
So we're waiting for finish work coming this fall.
Waiting for the finish. The finish should be sometime in the next month or so.
Okay.
Can I ask one question? That when that company was in, which that company did a really good job, I gotta give them credit. They are the only ones that have respected any of our property at all. With the airport willing to have left us the 20-foot bumper if we wanted it.
They tried to.
I understand it, and I mean, come on, that looked like hell. So
But it was, yeah, when you
Right.
had a bunch of sticks.
Right.
And honestly, they didn't even have to go cut them again because the contract stipulated that they had to cut them off high.
Oh, right, yeah,
And
yeah,
we realized
we
how
know
bad
that.
it looked, and they said, okay, we'll go cut it down.
Yeah, no, we really appreciated that. We actually had befriended them. I mean, they were invited to our house after they were all done. We had a good barbecue. It was great. So, I mean, if they came back and worked again someplace, great. But my question is that we have a few select trees, which is easy enough to see from Airport Road.
I'm sorry, you had what?
We have some trees
Yeah.
from, if you go up the Airport Road entrance, the entrance to the airport, and you look, there's only, I mean, there's the obvious pine trees, the ones that stick up way up high. So my question is, couldn't that maybe have been part of that project to have had those topped out as well when they
So-
were there?
This is more getting into the Q&A, but
Yeah.
I'll take this one real quickly.
Okay, thank you.
The FAA breaks these into individual projects. It's not a random thing. It can be very, very frustrating from this end as well. So what makes sense is not always what you're allowed to do. So a project like that was specifically an on-site clearing project. That's what they have to do. If it's 1 foot over the line, they're not gonna do it because their contract stipulates what they have to do. Now, if you went to Mike at the airport and said, Mike, you got a chainsaw, you cut that tree down for me, you probably would. But the contractors have signed a contract that very, very specifically says what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. And so, you know, I agree, we're looking out there at that one big pine tree that's still 30 feet too tall. And I'm like, well, why don't you cut that down? It's like, oh, we can't touch it. It's on the line. If you look at it, the marker actually, I think, touches the side of the tree that we're talking about. So it's more about the rules that are laid out in the stipulations of the contract than anything else.
Can I say,
Thank you.
Matt, can you please, you keep making this correlation to like, this is the same as, if you said this once before.
Randy, I would love.
Yeah, I would like to, I would love to hear you. Could we wait
I
until?
will answer any question, I will answer any question. You guys want to get through the.
We'll get through the agenda and then we'll do that. I'm very interested in that. I think that that's great dialogue where we can learn a lot from each other. So thank you, hold tight, and we'll get there. Anything else about on-premise clearance? All right. Then off-premise clearance is next.
I've got it, I can read that. Well, here, we'll finish these and I'll bounce back to you, if that's good.
Okay, so we want to do it now?
I'll just read the email from Matt Neeson.
Okay.
So the off-premise of, the consultant, the engineer, had a schedule conflict, he couldn't be here tonight, but he did send an email of the update that he would provide, and what it says is all sub-consultants are progressing their respective scopes of work to include surveys, appraisals, review appraisals, title searches, and environmental phase 1 reviews. We're waiting on some clarification on a few points from the FAA. We have set up bi-weekly coordination meetings with the FAA to provide progress updates. Some landowners have been receptive to our outreach via letter, email, and phone calls to provide clarifying information on the process and the true intent of the project. Others have refused opening lines of communication. One landowner had their attorney send us a letter indicating they had no desire to cooperate moving forward. Our next steps are to obtain and review sub-consultant deliverables and share with cooperating and willing landowners. Which kind of takes us right into the ASIP update, which for those of you who don't know, it's Airport Capital Improvement Plan. We're meeting with the FAA either weekly or bi-weekly, developing the plan. We'll talk a little bit more about it in the Q&A, but essentially the capital improvement plan that we were handed when we stepped into the commission, there were some changes that need to be made, and we're working with the FAA to make those changes. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So with that, we'll probably go to new business FBO update.
Yeah, FBO, some of you probably know, maybe if you don't, I took over, we started the FBO up there about 2 months ago, June 1st. It's actually, I think it's going really well. The majority of the time is honestly been spent in just trying to figure out the projects that are existing, deal with that, in the meantime, trying to provide good service to the people that come in. And a lot of that is going to be creating an awareness in the community. A lot of what I hear here is a lot of misinformation, a lot of ignorance, some of it intentional. A lot of it is ignorance. Ignorance doesn't mean that people that are dumb, it just means that they don't have the information. That's what it means. So I'm trying to help get some information out there. That's what it means. So I will try to help get information out there. I'm not putting anybody down. I'm saying that's what it is. It's not the right information. So that's the bunch of the problem that we experience there is that they don't understand the usefulness. They don't understand the usefulness of the airport and what it actually does. And a lot of the things that go on with the having FBO and airport are under the radar. You're not going to know that. We get, so to speak, you know, we get medical transports in there. People aren't aware of that. When they call on a helicopter and say, where does the helicopter go? Well, it goes where it can pick up someone and land back in Oneonta to get fuel And a lot of times they wait there and stay there. They wait there for.
Excuse me, sorry, Matt. I'm hearing a lot of voices from the audience. I would like to remind you, when we had the public comments, we listened to you. We listened with intent, and we were very silent. Now that we're talking, I'm expecting the same from the public. After this, we'll have a FAQ, and I'm looking forward to that, to have an interactive session. Please be quiet until we adjourn the meeting. Thank
So
you.
part of what we're doing is logging the traffic that's coming, so people have a better awareness of what actually goes on in the local area. Some of that's military, we had Black Hawk in there yesterday, or the day before. We get state police in there. When they had the Hall of Fame game at the Cooperstown, the state police come from Rochester, they land there. Then they go do their activities. Sometimes they come back to the Oriana Airport, then go back again to do more things the next day at whatever activities. There are times where they come down to do training with the dogs, they'll do dog training for the search and rescue dogs or the police dogs. They'll fly down in the helicopters there. There's a lot of activity that goes under the radar. Last week, everyone in town was excited because Chuck Schumer came to town to try to save Job Corps. He comes to the Oriana Airport. He doesn't announce it to anyone. He doesn't want anybody to know that he's coming. That's where he comes, and he comes here because in less than 5 minutes from the Oriana Airport, he can be in town. He literally left White Plains, was at the Oriana Airport, went to Job Corps, was back, and was gone in less than an hour. For him, it's extremely convenient. I actually met with him when he got back to the airport after his meeting downtown. Aside for that, it's just a lot more traffic than people think. So we believe that just logging that traffic and help people understand what's there, it will help people open people's eyes as to what really its usefulness and utility is to the community. I think that's one of the issues that we have. So the FBO's job is to provide services. We got a fuel truck there, and the fuel trucks has been very successful. We sold more fuel in the first 60 days than they sold in the all of last year, because we're having an understanding of what the customers are looking for when they're getting there. We're providing a van and a car up there, so if the pilots come and they want to stay overnight and there's other activity, instead of being forced to go someplace else, they can stay at the local airport. They can drive downtown, get a room, come back up the next morning. There's a lot of activity, and it's just not, it's not broadcast, so we're trying to record all that. Okay?
Did you mention any of the medical flights we?
Yeah, and we've reached out to some and asked, what they need and what is the problem. There are medical transport companies, they do transplants at Fox Hospital. Transplants don't come from right locally, they fly in. And transport companies are usually using the kind of planes that they won't come into the airport. I believe you had a discussion with one already.
I did, one of the big, large companies, Transmedics, they do a lot of organ transplants, and the short story is they can't use our airport. So
What kind of plane do they have?
The Phenom 300. We'll talk more about all
Yeah,
the stuff in the
question
FAQ.
and answer, we'll get.
Yep.
We had a consultant speak yesterday at the council meeting that informed us that all the major air companies have like 20 or 30 different types of planes that all can land at our airport. If you're transplanting a heart, it's that big, you don't need a Boeing 747 to bring it in.
We can
Yeah,
discuss that
we'll get it.
in the
We'll get to
FAQ.
that.
I can address that.
Yeah.
I think as far as the FBO goes, that's all I have for now.
All right. Airport rates and fees.
Do you guys know when the last time we raised or hangar rents were adjusted?
No, long time ago.
I think they're due for a revision. I had thought about putting new rates and fees together, but I kind of want to have just a discussion as a commission. The hangars are aging, and one of the things that we're going to run into is they're going to have to be replaced. at the current rates, it doesn't make any financial sense to build a new hangar at the rates which we're charging, or which the city is charging. So, what do you guys think? As far as how we want to go about this? Any ideas?
I think it's reasonable to increase the rates. They have been the same for a long time. Everything else goes up, and that's one of the things that should go up too. How much, I think is something we should research as a commission and get some numbers on paper, look at neighboring airports, look at the cost of rebuilding these hangars.
That's the wild card, is the cost of rebuilding. I have looked at nearby airports, we're fairly comparable currently to nearby airports, but you don't have to go very far. When you go down to Sky Acres, which is down by Poughkeepsie, they're at $315 a month. I'm sorry, $450. South Albany is at $315. Sky Acres down by Poughkeepsie is $450, and if you go down into North New Jersey, hangars for the same hangars, $835 a month. So and everybody's got a waiting list. That's, there's a shortage of hangars, there's no shortage of airplanes. So I think the wild card we should get with the engineering, we should get with Passero about what the realistic cost of replacing the hangars is, and make a recommendation to the Common Council to increase our hangar rents accordingly going into 2026, because realistically we're looking at 2026. Len, do you have thoughts?
So you're increasing based on the fact that you want to put some money aside to help put money in a CapEx fund to pay for the new hangars. Am I tracking you correctly on this?
Yeah, as a general statement. So I mean, as we've talked about with the FAA requirements on how the revenue is handled, it goes into the airport general operating fund, but we can split that off in different ways and look at the kind of the elephant in the room, that particularly the two lower hangars, they're aging out.
Which potentially are going to be raised if the parallel taxiway and service road are put in.
Right.
So, have you guys discussed the location where you would want to, and the size of those? I mean, would you change the size of the hangar?
No. The size and footprint would be essentially the same. And that's, it's crawl before we can walk. I think, we're very focused on crossing the bridges that we're in the middle of at the moment, but we should be thinking about what's next down the road. And the next thing
That's
is,
what I'm getting at is what is your customer base? I mean, are you moving away from that clientele base and moving over to something else, which would change the shape of the hangar? That's all I'm getting at.
yeah.
That's a good question. Look that far ahead. That do.
No, we've had pretty topical discussions with Passero about that, and essentially the conversation has gone to there's different options, which pretty much you just spelled out. Which one is going to be the one that makes the most sense? Part of it is hopefully pursuing a DOT grant. The FAA will not provide grants for hangars, but the DOT will, and the next grant cycle is to be determined. So that's essentially where our conversations have kind of ended on that. But as far as what we've got in front of us on our plate, I think we need to be looking at, and I'd like to do a little bit more research perhaps before the next meeting to have something that we can propose to the Common Council. And if the Common Council agrees with the rate changes, we can have that implemented by 2026.
Right.
That's my thought.
But are you adding any amenities to the existing structures, or are you painting them, or you upgrading them? It's kind of how you look at it as a landlord, right? You own a structure and you maintain it, keep upgrading it. It's been 20 years.
The new hangars, it's been 20 years.
Oh, the one up on top,
Yeah.
it's been 20?
2000, I'd have to check to be sure, but I believe they were built in 2006.
That's the rate.
And I mean, people aren't just paying for the hangar, they're also paying for using the facilities. They have electric power in their hangars. All of those have increased. So I think it's reasonable to find a way to increase what we're asking for. I think it needs to be done in a mindful way where we let the people who are renting the hangars that they know what's coming, and do it in a way that's palatable to people.
Right. How's the billing for the tenants that we have? How's that been going?
That's we were in early discussions to try to see if we could have an arrangement where we collect them through the FBO and deal with it right directly, then forward it to the accounts. Just, you know, they're way behind on the billing. They're swamped. I know there's a lot of things going on, and we think it'd be easier hopefully to deal with that.
They've been sent.
Caught up and get that. So we're having those discussions. Hopefully we'll have a proposal together we can bring to the council and decide if that's the one. It's probably easier if we deal with, you know, people right locally, deal with all that right on site.
Right, because you're putting a face to the,
Right.
to the client.
Right there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we also,
Go ahead.
we also need to upgrade the tenant agreement. The actual tenant agreement is probably just as old as the rates.
Yes.
So we need to look at the verbiage and update the terms of the.
I agree. Thank you.
I think I have a draft. I'll take a look at it.
Well, that's probably something that you have to have the city attorney.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, of course. So sorry, no, that's not an answer to the question, but
No, that's okay. We have more research to do, and we'll come back next time with some of the answers and start making the recommendations to the Common Council. Anything else about the airport rates and fees?
that's all I've got.
All right, then we'll go to the standard operating procedures. There are 5 listed there. The idea behind it is that the Airport Commission is starting to work on documentation for these 5 procedures, so that we have them in writing and we can review them on an annual basis and make sure that they're being enforced. I would think that it would be nice for a subgroup of the commissioners to work together to establish these and then bring them to a commission meeting and have them be reviewed there. What do you think?
I think that makes sense.
We've had a few problems this summer at the FBO, new problems that I think it helps reinforce that we need to do that. Because of the age of social media, it's easier for people to know when celebrity type people are coming into the airport, so we've had to be careful with security. We've had probably 25 autograph seekers at any given time when the planes came in for the Hall of Fame weekend. So we try to be much more conscious about locking the gates and making sure people couldn't get into spaces where they shouldn't get into. A couple of the Hall of Famers elected to meet the people and go sign autographs, and that's their right, but we want to make sure that we have procedures in place so if they want to be left alone, they're not bothered by that. We've also had issues with homeless type situations where someone's there just like using the shower in the building and got a bag and we realize that we don't have a lot of procedures to deal with what time we close the building, how we deal with things, you know, what business people are supposed to have up there. We have persons park in the parking lot, like sleep in their car. We have to have some procedures in place that might not ever been a problem before, but we have to address them with some kind of so we know what we're supposed to do and what we're not supposed to do.
I do have a boilerplate security protocol that McFarland Johnson sent us. This is some years ago, but that just needs to be tailored to our operations, so I can work on that. Make a note of it.
All right. And then we'll go through the other operating procedures and we'll divvy them out and come back at the next meeting if we're ready.
budget review and quarterly report, it would probably be advantageous, because the idea is to send a quarterly report to the common council of the finances at the airport, an FBO update, and, I mean, just essentially airport happenings. Should we reach out to the common council and see what kind of things? Len, do you have any thoughts off the top of your head, or should we meet about that, or what do you
On the
think?
budget review?
Well, just, what would the common council like to see? And you don't have to answer now, we can talk about it, or with anybody. What would the common council like to see in a report from the airport?
Well, I think tracking aircraft.
Okay.
You have different reports from the neighbors, and I think they would also like to know, because I think, Martin, you've been keeping records for a couple of years now.
Yes.
And Mike Stevens been keeping records for a couple of years now, so I think aggregating them together so that the neighbors know how much activity's been going on with the airport would be helpful for everybody for that transparency. Obviously, expenses, the revenue, to hear that fuel sales has been compared to an annual fuel amount is impressive. I think you said 60 days got you an annual of last year. That's pretty impressive. I think also recommendations. Nobody talked about the rates. I thought maybe you talked about the fuel rates. Are we comparable in fuel rates also? It's not just hangars, but fuel space. Needs to be identified, but and then just projections of what other revenues, right? So we know that hangar space and/or landing fees and fuel sales are
Yeah, and I
we're an
have
airport.
the first 2 months pretty close, not all of us managers, so it's pretty close, but you're already 20% more fuel than all of last year in just 2 months. The revenue for the city side, these are rough numbers because the office manager is on today, but I believe it's somewhere around $12,000 just towards city revenue.
In the 2 months and 60 days, right? So that, obviously those numbers help our financial director in her projections, putting the overall global budget together for the city budget. If she knows that there's an increase of more than, say, 10 to 12% in revenue stream, she's going to be observing that. Okay. I did want to actually go back to communication in that SOP. We kind of laid out the communication when the commission was laid up. Are you thinking you're going outside of that line?
No, I think that's.
One thing that did come up, I don't know if you were gonna get to that in the agenda or not, so we thought it would be a good idea to try to find the avenue, whether it's on an existing website or the city website or a different website, to be able to upload all of this documentation of what's going on to a simple place for people to find it. We've offered to the council, we've offered to all the neighbors whenever we have an event to come and do a workshop where we give question and answer. Very few people have actually taken advantage of from those times. But it would feel like if maybe we had one place where we could put all that stuff, upload all that stuff.
Right.
That it would be someplace people would just access it. Because like you said, this is public information. There's no secrets in it. It's pretty straightforward.
Well, I mean,
I
I was gonna say that website.
And
I guess you guys can start another website.
Sure.
Yeah, it's not that complicated to start a
Or
website.
even,
So
keep it on the
this is just
City of
something
Anianta website.
We want to ask, maybe ask the accountant if that should just start on the website and do it that way. But that's a question we probably need to pose.
Yeah. I think a place anywhere online to share more information is good.
Right, absolutely. And then get the information out to, definitely I would start with the neighbors.
Yep.
And then the general masses. I mean, we're struggling at the council level just to get, there's a flash vote surveying. We're trying to get to a certain number, and we're a couple weeks at this, and I think we're only like 25, 30% of getting to that number, and it's a low number. So it is difficult. We're all challenged trying to get that open lines of communication out there. And you would think in today's world, where we all have an electronic device stuck to our hand, that it wouldn't be that difficult, but it seems to be.
So to answer your question, Lenham, our discussion about how the communication channels up and down, we're on that exact path. I want to put it in writing and share that with the Common Council, that this is how we communicate. One of the things that did recently happen is we have the Airport Commission email address, which will be crucial for that we can, and what's happened, because there's a lot of things happening with the projects that we've talked about tonight, and there's email chains, and if you forget to put one person on the email chain, you know, there's miscommunications that happen, whereas if we can just have the Airport Commission email, everybody on the commission sees it, and then everything, just as we talked about with communication with the FAA, with the airport manager, with the consultants, we're copied on everything, and then we can be funneling that communication up to the Common Council.
Right, but we also talked about who would actually be communicating with the general public, who would be communicating with the FAA.
Right.
So
Yes.
are we still staying in that line?
Yes.
That will just be documented in there,
Right.
so that everybody knows, and if we have new commissioners coming on, they should be able to read the SOPs and understand how it works and what the expectations are.
Right.
So it's just documenting a lot of stuff we do today.
Sorry to put you on the spot, but and I will send I'll send an email to everybody on the Common Council, particularly talking about the quarterly report and anything that anybody wants to see, because I want to be transparent with everything we're doing.
Anything else? Commissioners for SOPs?
I don't have anything else.
Okay. Then the only other thing I have before we adjourn is I received a letter from Lou. Dear Martijn, please consider this message as my intention to resign as Airport Commissioner of the City of Oneonta, New York, effective August 21st, 2025. It has been an honor for me to serve the Airport Commission since January 5th, 2021. Under your leadership, I have enjoyed assisting you as Commission Vice Chairman. I am pleased that the Airport Commission is continuing to move in a positive direction, supporting the economic development interests of the City of Oneonta and Otsego County. I am pleased to assist you in making my departure a smooth transition. Very truly yours, Lou Shields. Not the news we were hoping for, but thank you for your service.
Thank you, Martijn.
I really appreciate it. I know that also before serving the Airport Commission, you've served many other boards. You've made a big difference in this city with all of your efforts. And I would like to congratulate you for all the work you've done. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lou.
Yes, thank you, Lou, for all your years of service.
Yes. All right. And then the only item left is adjournment. I am looking for someone to make the motion and someone to second the motion.
I'd like to make the motion.
I'll second it.
All right, then at this point, the formal meeting is over, which we can go into the next section where we would like to answer questions you have.
Great. This will be on the record?
This will be, we're still recording, right?
Okay. So I need verification, obstruction identification to this statement. 34-1 surface is an obstacle identification surface rather than an obstacle clearance surface. This means that penetrations by obstructions are permitted, but they can result in penalties to the instrument approach procedure, such as increased visibility minimums or limitations on the use of the approach at night. I'm waiting. I need a verification of that statement.
Where did you find it?
I asked you a question. Question and answer.
The project that we are working on right now, we have our airport consultant work on this. They are familiar with the regulations
Can you
and
answer that question?
Yeah,
Yes.
this is what I would say. I would say this is why we hire an outside consultant.
This is why
because
we're
these-
here.
I know that, and this is why there's certain questions. I'm not an invasive person, Jim, you know that. If we can't have, or we're not qualified to answer a certain question, we can't answer that question. So that's why the consultants are hired to spearhead these projects, because that is their profession.
And my point is, that's why we're here.
Right,
To
I
talk
understand
about
that.
this, to discuss this.
Yeah.
Yet your consultant that's been hired by the city is not here. So, I've got a follow-up question to that.
Why
one,
isn't he
because-
here, really?
Because you can't verify that question, I'm going to ask you another one that is a follow-up. It was stated that parcel number 2, or the northeast end of the runway, 60 to 90 acres on the northeast end, will be cleared to the ground. Can you answer that?
I can answer that. The first phase of this project is to determine the survey, what the area is, what the obstacles are, and what the options are. The first phase is interactions with the landowner to see what needs to be done. So no decisions have been made yet on what exactly needs to be cut and how it's going to be
So
done.
that's-
That is part of this project.
So that statement was not made.
Yes, the problem is, like I said, these are in phases, and they're not controlled by us. The FAA dictates the phases. So the first phase is they need the navigation easement. The main mistake that was made when they built the airport is they didn't procure them immediately, because it was surrounded by fields, and probably no one thought that was gonna be an issue. And it probably wasn't an issue 20 years ago, probably definitely wasn't 30 years ago. The trees continue to grow. But they fly over and do a flight check periodically. You don't know when they're gonna do it. We got a notice the other day, it said, beware, 5-mile perimeter around the airport, there's a flight check, which means that they're flying over and they're gonna shoot that with LiDAR and they're gonna assess your glide paths. They're the ones who initiate those from that point, say when an obstacle is too much. I believe that part of that statement is correct. Certain things can penetrate a certain amount. We don't make that decision. That decision gets made way down the line. The first phase is they need the easement, and it isn't just for trees. Right now, it's for trees, but it's for potentially building a building, and it varies. I mean, as you know, the terrain around there, especially up by Randy's house, it goes and undulates and climbs and climbs. So one area, it might be 10 feet off the ground, another area might be 70 feet off the ground. The navigation easement really is to make a permanent identification that nothing can go into that space now or in the future. So if 20 years from now you want to sell the property and somebody wants to put a barn, they have to go through the permit process, which one of those things would be to make sure it doesn't get into that airspace. So until, the problem is we can't get some of those answers the way the process works. First thing they do is identify basically the outer lines of the V, which is what you see on the map. You go from the end of the runway, and there's a V that goes out for the approach. And inside of that, they need to have control of that airspace. The height will be determined once they shoot that LiDAR. And then in phase 2, once they have those easements, because up till then, they can't go on anybody's property, they can't do certain things. But once they have those easements, then they do a study to determine which penetrations need to go and which can stay. And that's the information. It's not a being invasive. We don't have all that information. And it changes. The study that you're looking at is 10 years old. That first study was in 2015. We got this project to take it on, but this is not a new project. And most of you were notified 5 and 6 years ago when there was public notices around 2000 that this project was underway. This is now, okay, I picked it up, we got elected to handle this. So
So
I
is
can't
that an
give you
answer?
the answer, because nobody knows until we get to the next step.
Right, but the first question was very definitive. It wasn't ambiguous, and that was a non-answer. The second question was maybe. So the third follow-up is when do the ramifications and costs of New York State water regulations and reservoir protection get evaluated?
Well, does anybody know that you realize that logging goes on in the city watershed almost every year. They had 2 log sales in the city watershed last year, cutting timber. As a matter of fact, the New York City owns more of timberland in the New York City watershed than any landowner in New York State. And logging is done in the watershed all the time.
And they trashed it.
It's regulated,
Yeah,
it's
they must-
controlled, and there are some people that do some things wrong that shouldn't, but they pay a penalty for that.
If you look at
Are
the,
regulated and controlled, it's always part of the process.
yeah. If you look at the clearance that was done at the 6 end, and you can look at it, and it was very carefully planned. There are a lot of those bags along where wetlands are to make sure that none of the water runoff gets into the wetlands. This was not something that was just where they just came in, they just cut the trees. There was a whole study done beforehand, and that's expected to happen
My
with
question
the
was,
second phase too.
when do the costs get evaluated so the city council can make an informed decision? It wasn't how these protections.
Every one of those
happen.
things is addressed in an environmental assessment.
Yes.
That's part of the project that they have to do.
Okay, so when?
Well, that,
That's
he had
the-
just indicated today,
When, Mike,
Yes.
and Mark, they'd like to know.
he
There
read
should be like
today
the
from
first
the
thing done.
consultants, that part of that is, that's part of that's the design phase of the project. That's what I'm saying, that's phase 2 of the project. The design phase is what needs to be cut, how it needs to be cut, who's gonna cut it, and making sure it's done the proper way. That's phase 2 of the project, yes.
That's not addressing the situation, though, that's not addressing the effects.
That's
You're
not
saying-
what?
That's not addressing the effects of what's gonna happen. You're saying how it's gonna be cut, not why it shouldn't be cut.
Well, what needs to be cut is what's penetrating and making it an unsafe condition. So the determination is,
That's not the question.
what is the
I
question?
have a question.
Wait.
Okay.
Are we just gonna shout out, or is it
No.
gonna be a
Yeah,
process?
I've been raising my hand.
All right.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, let's start with you, sir, please.
Okay, thanks. My name is Mike Lynch, I live at 51 Fort Avenue here in the city. I have a question about, well, first of all, a comment. To come here tonight to be told, we don't have the answers, that's for the consultants. All these people were sent here tonight for answers. The council sent us here tonight, the mayor sent us here tonight for answers to these questions. Second of all, the question I have really, I think might help at the front end of this, is about the project itself,
Yes.
right? Okay. So the council voted on April 15th to authorize $350,000 for phase 1. Is that
Phase 1,
accurate?
yes, only phase 1.
Only phase 1 of the
Yes.
project which includes contacting property owners and negotiating with them about their property, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, my question is, there was a lot of confusion at last night's common council meeting about if the city were to intervene, when would when is their opportunity to do so? So my first question is the city obligated to spend $350,000 on phase 1 of this project? Yes.
Yes, so we are, since we have an airport, we have to work with the FAA on grant insurances. So when municipalities build airports, they use the FAA for funding because it's too expensive to do this out of pocket. When you accept FAA funding, there are strings attached, and one of them is that the airport needs to be operational, it needs to receive traffic, and among other things, like the airways need to be clear of obstructions. So that's a requirement. Since we have an airport and we own that airport, this is something we have to do.
Okay, second question. The motion that the council passed, it referred to grant funding from the FAA to replace almost all of that $350,000. Is that guaranteed?
Yes, they approved.
Yeah, my understanding is yes.
If we complete the project, we will be reimbursed.
So where is the next decision point for the common council on this project?
They've approved the design, then when we go into the execution part, they would have to approve the additional funding for that.
Okay.
So clearing of the trees, whatever the outcome is of phase 1, they still have to approve phase 2.
Which would be about roughly when, do you know?
We don't know.
We don't.
Could be
Yeah, that's-
later this year, it could be later, we don't.
Right, and so I mentioned earlier that we are meeting with the FAA weekly or bi-weekly, and these are the things that we're talking about. What is the realistic timeline? I don't have that answer exactly, but we're looking at next year.
Okay, so my last, and I'll sit down. The consultants come back to you at the end of phase 1, and they say, we negotiated with these 3 property owners, they gave us easements, that's all been worked out, everybody else shut us out. Is that the decision point for the city to determine whether or not they're gonna take properties through eminent domain?
We don't know yet. We're waiting for guidance from the FAA.
Yes.
Most of this is spearheaded by the FAA. So when you have these meetings.
That's not an answer.
But we don't
It's
have
not
an
an
answer.
But it's the reality.
Wait a minute, wait a minute. The question is, when can the government take people's property? And you're saying you don't know.
I don't have all the answers. I'm not
Well,
an FAA official.
and if I can jump in a second, there's, kind of in relation to some of the other questions too. I don't want to give you the wrong information, and if I don't know the answer, I can find the answer for you. But if I don't know it off the top of my head, I'm not gonna tell the whole group something is wrong. But I'm happy to find it, and if that's something you'd like to know, I can find that information.
I appreciate it. I also think, I appreciate that, thank you. And I also think, this time spent tonight is not gonna be productive. We should have had a consultant here, because that's what, or somebody from the FAA or both. Because that's how this is shaping up, right?
So tell me your name again, and I'll get that. Mike Lynch.
As far as the consultant not being able to be here, I'm not sure why that is, but I know that he's very committed to the project he's working on. So I'm sure he has a valid reason why he can't
And
be
this is
here.
not the first meeting we've had where we've invited people to come, and the consultant's been there, and very few people have shown.
So, excuse me.
Paid.
What?
Is he getting paid?
Is who
Yeah.
gets paid?
The consultant?
Of course.
All right,
I know.
he's obligated to make sure that he's having representation here at the council. Just like any employee, you don't just pay an employee and not have him show up for work. This is work, this is his job, right?
I do not believe it's fair to make a statement on why a consultant cannot be here tonight. I have no information on that, and I respect his personal life too. I'm sorry, that's the best answer I can give.
Go ahead.
Shannon Forbes, 1177 Kelly Corners Road. I'm part of parcel 2, 25 acres. We came to the October meeting with your hot dogs and your hamburgers. You also didn't have a consultant there. You had no information for us there. You said, don't worry, we're your advocate. We're gonna work with you, everything will be fine. We were willing to work with you to make the airport safe. We said we would walk with you and talk to you about specific trees to come down. My husband met with you on June 18th, where you told him that our property, 360 of the 25 acres, would be clear cut to the ground. To the ground, and
That's
possibly
exactly
our home.
what I said the easement will go to the ground. That's what I said, the easement goes to the ground. And
You
then they
said it
determine.
would be clear
then they-
cut
well,
to
then
the ground.
They can't tell what actually has to be cut until they do the assessment in phase 2. But the easement itself means they have the right to cut things down to the ground.
Okay, but that's a whole different story than what we heard in October, and let me finish. We've been coming to meetings, we've been talking to our council members, we've hired an attorney, we're trying to get information. We've gotten rude responses from Passero saying, all it says in there is eminent domain, okay? So how do you expect all these people to react when every time we come to you, you say you don't have information?
We do have
We are
information
seeking-
for
You
you.
said you don't have the information that we are asking tonight.
Some of it we cannot get yet because it's not in this phase of the development.
So how forward can you go without
I
information?
think part of the issue is how many people have seen the maps? Okay, part of the issue is a little bit of, and just so everybody in the room knows, I've just come to this a few months ago. This project is 10 years old. This is not me making this up. This is a 10-year-old project that I've just tried to say, okay, I'll be the bad guy, I'm gonna try to get this done. So I'm coming to this fairly new. But I think some misunderstandings about the map and what the map was saying led to some, and that's why 3 times at the last meeting, Jim, I tried to clarify to you when we talked about the easement, because you seem to think that it was this tree and that tree, and I said, Jim, I said, you need to understand this easement goes around. I spent 3 times to try to clarify that, because what happens, I think from the map, is that look, you see pinpoints pointed out on that, and you see specific what looks like trees that are high points. And I've just recently learned this as well. It came up in the last ACIP meeting. What that really means on that map is that's the high point of a 50-foot radius. So they're taking certain points on that map, and they're picking out one, and that's a high point of that 50-foot radius. That's what was explained to me. But I tried to, I sent you the map, Jim, and said, okay, do you see what's orange on this map?
You didn't send me the map. Matt Nissen handed it to me.
No, I texted. Okay, no, you're right, you're right, I didn't text it to you. Oh, if anybody, I'm not hard to get hold of. If anybody wants to get hold of me, I'm pretty easy to get hold of. I will text you that, but if you look at the map, the shading area, what you see shaded shows you that there's an obstruction. The severity of the obstruction, especially since the information is so old, is we don't really know, but that tells you the trees haven't gotten any shorter in that area. So those are the areas that we're looking at. And so when we talked about it at the meeting that you were at, which by the way, you were the only one at, I made sure that we clarified 3 times that you need to understand that this easement is more than you're interpreting right now. And maybe that's what got everybody worked up. But Randy, I did stop at people's house because it wasn't because I'm being a pain, because the consultants were under contract and they said, I'm not getting a response from anybody. I said, you know what? I'll try to get phone numbers and emails so that at least these people are in the loop.
You already had our phone numbers and emails. We were at the
I
meeting
didn't,
on
no, I
October.
didn't stop at your house because they had it, but the other people, we didn't have.
And there was 1 day notice before that June meeting that Jim went to. 1 day. I got an invite to your fucking hot dog fest up at the airport.
Excuse me,
I'm
that
really
language
sorry.
is not
I mean,
acceptable.
But I got 1 invite to the October
Well,
thing.
and
was it.
if
And
that
then
was
I
in
got
fact the
one
case,
email
then
from
I
you.
apologize, but I'm available
So,
anytime.
communication-
I'm available
Okay.
anytime.
Could we please go to the next question? Actually,
I wanna make a statement.
you want to make a statement?
Yes, I
Okay.
might be able to answer some questions, just kind of, well, let's start with the high-level overview. And, so, communication's been mentioned. I hear a lot of everybody's concerns, and I'm taking it in and trying to address it the best we can. One of the questions earlier was the composition of the airport commission. Martine started before I did. This is a volunteer job for us. You know, we're trying to be here and be transparent with regard to our meetings. We're limited by public meeting rules, having a quorum. When we have availability, we try to hold meetings. I apologize that sometimes it's late notice. Our intent is to get the information to you guys. We're not trying to withhold things. We're not trying to do anything sneaky. With regard to the project, we're in the very early phases of the project. We've talking about aggravation, my tongue's will take, that's the word, easements. It's a design phase. It's where we need to get the information before we can get the information that you want. Everyone wants to know how are they affected by it. Well, and I hate to sit here and say that I don't know, but I don't know. I don't know until the appraisers and the surveyors and the engineers get us the information. So that's where we're at with it. One of the things that's been talked about is, and I hear over and over again, is airport expansion. That's a valid concern. Environmentals, very valid concern. So here's the process. This project, as we've talked about, is an old project. It's been on the books for a while. It has to do with the current airport. This project is completely independent of airport expansion. So we don't need to, well, I want to give you guys the right information, so I'm choosing my words carefully. I'll just leave it at that. Airport expansion is completely independent of the obstruction removal project.
Yes.
Yeah, no
We
matter
have-
what happens, this has been said, this has to be done. Now, we've specifically asked them, say, how much do we have to take? What has to come out? But again, we don't have that answer. We haven't been given that answer. The first base is, this is the V, that we know, because that's delineated pretty simply. It's a certain angle away from the end of the runway. So that shows if you go to line, like Randy, it goes in front of your house. You see where that line goes in front of your house.
Is that
That's-
V for the existing airport?
Yes.
or the
Yes.
Everything,
expanded airport?
Everything is
we're talking
existing.
about is from the existing airport.
The
It has
existing airport.
Nothing to do with anything else.
Is that V vertical as well as
The
horizontal?
V comes out vertical, you can see the V, that's pretty simple, and it's they had referred to the 34-to-1 slope. So you can picture an airplane, we've all been on, most of us have been on planes, and we've been on scary planes, and we're not feeling real that good, because you can't see, it's foggy, it's rainy, you know it's not. Well, they rely on the glide slope, they rely on their instruments, and this is how they come into airports. And the FAA says, this area has to be clear, because if this plane is coming down through here, they need to know that that's clear. No different than you're driving down 98 in the night and it's foggy, you need to know there's nothing in the way. That slope is determined by LiDAR when they shoot that, and then they can make that show up.
Can I just have a quick question?
Sure.
Two things. Thank you, by the way, for saying that these two projects are separate.
Completely.
That's very helpful, because in my mind, they're absolutely connected. So that kind of clarifies one thing. So thank you, that's important. You heard that that's our wording.
Yes.
The other thing I keep hearing is your communications with the FAA. And the FAA is saying this, and the FAA is saying that, and they're doing whatever it is you're talking about, that you're flying around and seeing things. How can we see those reports? Because I keep hearing this, and part of me is saying, I don't know. I'm skeptical, and I don't want to just dismiss what you're saying. So I'm very skeptical of who's saying what and who is generating this interest, okay? So I think that's where there's a gap.
Well,
Okay,
you know-
excuse me, I
Okay.
don't want to be
Oh,
interrupted.
you're not done? Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, so is there a way that we can see or communicate ourselves, or at least have an idea of what the FAA is telling you to do?
This is a pretty simple one for now.
I actually am asking him, not you.
Oh,
Thank
that's
you.
fine.
Yeah, essentially where our role is to support the engineers, and they work with the
They didn't
FAA.
come out of the blue, the engineers. You hired them.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, so you hired them for what, and when, and why?
Well, we hire an airport consultant because airports are very complex. There's a lot of regulations, there's a lot of, even for projects that we're doing, there's so many timelines that we need to fall within. For instance, like certain times of the year, you cannot take trees down at all because of some of the regulations. So this is very complex, and we need the help. We need a consultant to help us here. We can definitely look and see what we can release from what the FAA is telling us. There is no, we're not hiding anything. At the same time, for most of, I think, projects that are being done, I think there's many other projects that the city of Oneonta does where they work with consultants, where not everything is given to the public. However, I don't think we'll share as much as we can.
Well, just because you said you're meeting with them every week,
Yes.
so that's a lot of communication, and we're just curious.
It is.
Who's generating what?
Yeah, and that's a good question. And really, our meetings are fairly brief, and what they're looking for is updates in the process. And, or we'll come up with a question. So for those of you who don't know me, I grew up in Milford. I learned to fly at the Oneonta Airport. I'm currently qualified as a Boeing 767 captain.
So they're not having a conversation?
This is an answer to your question. The environmental assessment form is what what started this whole process, and that was generated by Pissarro, I believe Pissarro Engineering.
McFarland and Johnson.
McFarland Johnson.
I'm sorry, McFarland and Johnson, many years ago, and that's what spearheaded this, it says, it's an assessment of the airport's assessment of the, and that the pages that you see are part of that form. I was asking Len if that's still online, I believe it used to be online, I'm not sure if it's still online.
Just to show you.
Well, also McFarland Johnson also was extremely disrespectful, made a mess, and basically got fired. Okay, so which is why you kind of have a new consultant, because McFarland Johnson stunk.
I can't speak to that.
Well, that's
That was
okay,
before
you
my
don't
time.
have to, we all know that.
So I told Jim earlier, I'm gonna send him this, but that was done in 2020. And then this link,
Where can we all find?
well,
this?
that's what Matt was just talking about, because I had this link earlier today, and it was supposed to take us to the city website, so I'll talk with Carrie, and we'll have it put back on the city website, because it's not there, okay?
And what's that called?
This is the environmental report that was done in 2020. Okay?
So did you guys write this down?
2020.
Yeah, it was done in 2020.
When does that have to be updated?
Well, that's what they're doing.
That's a great question. And I guess I'm gonna sound like those guys. Yeah, because I'm like Mike Lynch, I wanted our paid employee to be here, so, it's not fair to these guys because they're volunteers, and that individual is paid and he's a paid professional, he's supposed to have.
I realize they're a volunteer.
Right.
But they have a vested interest in the airport for air pilot.
Yes, sir. I can answer.
Are a pilot? Mark?
No, I'm not. I'm not a
What is
pilot.
your interest in the airport, and why do you sit on the commission?
Sure. My interest in the airport is I've always been interested in aviation. I like aviation. I started going to some of the airport commission meetings to understand what it's about. The bigger thing that I've learned over the past couple of years is the economic opportunities that this airport can offer our area. The city of Oneonta, Otsego County. It can be a major driver to get people here to come here to this area and help either bring people here to spend their money or people here to invest in the area. There are a lot of different purposes that the airport fulfills. One of them is like the organs that for hospitals. That's so important for us. We also have, with the power lines, when we have storms coming through, we have helicopters here coming here so that they can land at the airport and then inspect all of our power lines. We have a lot of tourism for the baseball fields that are coming in by airplanes. And so there are politicians flying in. There's many different reasons why this airport is important and why I believe in it.
That airport has been there since 1969.
66,
66.
69, yeah.
65.
Yeah.
65. Has it really benefited the area? And has Oneonta grown from here?
Can I answer
It has
that?
not.
Yeah.
So Catskill Airways, right, first of all,
I remember that.
right? So what I have been inundated since I've been associated with the Oneonta Airport is when are we going back to LaGuardia? When is the common man gonna have that ability to go back? Because right, they were flying on a very regular basis, back and forth from Oneonta to LaGuardia.
They were.
I can tell you that opportunities happen all the time, right? I've tried getting Mohawk Valley Community College to come down here and have their aircraft mechanic program here, a sister flight to them up there. I've had folks that were gonna create aircraft at the airport. It's just trying to go down black holes all the time. Matt and I, we attended a meeting where a woman right now, she started a business for rural aviation. So she looked at Oneonta and 15 other rural areas like Oneonta to take battery operated aircraft piloted and she has the landing rights across from LaGuardia. She's already secured that. So it kind of felt like it was going full circle of 59 years from when Catskill Airways started going back and forth to LaGuardia. So there's all these opportunities that, as Martine was just mentioning, but you just got to keep exploring, right? And as I said earlier, airports make their money on their hangar space, their tie downs, and their fuel sales. And it's really good to hear that the FBO has created an opportunity with a fuel truck, which we never had before, and has increased revenue.
$12,000?
12,000
Which
gallons.
is
That's
nothing.
right, that's
12,000 is
60
the,
days.
of the city's
What was
portion.
that?
Right. That was the city's portion the first 2 months.
Right, that's a profit in 60
Right.
days. Right.
So that doesn't benefit, that one filled 20 potholes, basically, I mean, in the long scheme of things.
Why did Catskill close Catskill Airways? They didn't have the traffic, they didn't have the profit margin to make it work. And that's because there was not that much demand. Why is the demand suddenly now more and enough to necessitate airplanes that aren't needed? Because the report we got last night was that there was a mirage of many, many, many different airplanes with every single company out there that could come here. So
That's a
why
good-
do we need a longer airstrip?
Yeah.
It's a great question. The industry, as all industries do, evolve, and the industry has largely moved away from that small commuter service, whereas most small airports and small communities like this had commuter service. And really, it's not a bad thing, but the construction of the interstate system, quite frankly, it's not cost effective for an airline to provide service to a city like this, just because people are going to choose, instead of spending the money on the ticket, they're going to get on I-80 and drive to Albany. That's what I would do. Regarding the statements about aircraft that can land on this runway, it's misleading. A manufacturer publishes specifications on an airplane, and if you go online and you look, we have 4,200 feet, and you can say, well, this airplane's advertised landing distance is, 4,000 feet, pick a number. And you go and you look and you find all the airplanes that have a published landing distance or takeoff distance, we call it balanced field length, of under 4,200 feet. What it doesn't pay attention to is that is under, if you look at the notes on that, it's ideal weather conditions. And it also doesn't mention the federal aviation regulations that apply. If you look in Part 135 and 121, which every commercially operated aircraft operates under one of those two parts, you have to take that landing distance on a dry runway and multiply it by a factor of 1.67. And if the runway is wet, you multiply it by 1.92. So if the runway is wet, for example, you're nearly double, so that 4,000 now becomes upwards of 8,000 feet of runway required. So, although it's correct to say an aircraft can land in 4,000 feet, there are regulations that prohibit that operation.
And again, what we're talking about now is, even if nothing else changed there, because of the fact that the FAA controls, it's one of the 5,000 or more controlled airports by the FAA, they say these obstructions are in the way. You have to maintain that. What you do is you sign the list of assurances, it's called. So the land was actually purchased with FAA money 60 years ago. So it's not like you can get in or out of this. This was always an FAA controlled airport. And they are the ones who say you have to maintain it for public service. You have to, there's a lot of a list of assurances that you have to do according to that. And one of the things is maintaining that airspace and making it navigable. And the airspace now has obstructions in it. That's where this whole thing started many years ago. The trees got taller and taller and taller, and they said, you have trees in the way. And this is what we're talking about now. This, even if nothing else changed, if nobody ever added another foot to the airport, if nothing else changed, if we didn't change a hangar, if we didn't do anything, this project is in our lap.
All those requirements for maintenance, what do they cost a year now with what we have? And what's it gonna cost when you double the size? And who's gonna pay that? Obviously, only on the taxpayers.
You mean double the size of the runway?
Well, he just said it's 4,000, he's going to 8,000.
Yeah,
Right?
Nope, I didn't say that.
No.
Just to be clear,
No.
All right, all right.
that aircraft would require, under those conditions, that much runway.
What is?
In an ideal world, we would like to have more runway, but we're not there. Just so everybody in the room is clear, we're talking about an obstruction clearance project on the existing runway that we have. I'd love to daydream about having longer runways and more airplanes and all this, but we're not there yet. So let's just talk about if the.
You're never gonna be. Well, and maybe not, but this is still in our lap.
Yeah.
This is
Well-
in our lap. This would, like, you have to do this.
Again, what are the tax obligations gonna be for everybody? Do we have any idea? I mean, how?
It's not really,
What-
this
you know,
isn't, this
one of
isn't
the-
really changing it.
Yeah, so one of the items that's been discussed in the grant assurance package, and it's about a 19-page document or so, when you work with the FAA, and it's not just about taking grant money, it's about operating an airport safely within FAA guidelines, which makes sense, right? You know, we don't want to, be the Wild West out here. We want to operate under FAA guidelines. So the FAA has a long list of the things that we need to do, and one of the things that they talk about is how the money moves through the airport. And as a summary, the revenue generated by the airport stays within the airport, which minimizes the tax burden to the what they call the airport sponsor, in this case, the city of Oneonta.
And their goal is, they'll tell you, their goal, when they collect seat money from everyone who flies commercial. So when you fly to JFK or fly at anybody, they collect seat money for every person there. And the FAA collects that money and they spread that out among all the other airports. Their goal is to try to make all those airports pretty much self-sustaining. That's what they're aiming for. So they pay typically 90% of these projects. The state matches another 5% of the 10%. So most of the projects cost the local about 5%.
There's some major concern, seriously.
I'm sorry?
There's some major concern because this company that you guys have for your lawyers or your representatives, Pasco or whoever they are.
Passero Associates.
Passero, thank you. For instance, Gary and Marietta, they were told that when they come in and the trees are cut, they asked, okay, you guys cut all the trees on our property. And they're supposed to keep it to maintain clearance and whatever for future use. They asked very politely, who pays the taxes on that property? Well, we don't, you do. They were told very rudely, can we replant? No, you can't replant anything. Is somebody gonna come in and reseed it? No.
That's very surprising.
Not really, because there's other people that have made phone calls,
Well,
that company's been
If that's the
very
case,
kind
then we'll
to-
look into it, because
Yeah.
this is what he was saying, any kind of communication you get, forward to us.
Yes,
because
please do.
It's not coming from us, so if there's something that somebody's doing that's untoward, it shouldn't be done that way, we would like to know.
Well, that woman that answers the phone, she needs to be fired, because I mean, from everything I've heard from anybody that's talked to her, it's nothing but a flaming witch. And I'm being polite.
Yeah, okay.
No,
Excuse me, some other people too.
This might be an ignorant question, but, so, the FAA says you have to do this. Is there a deadline, or you can't fly into there? Because planes are still flying in.
Yes.
Regular.
If it's so dangerous,
So if you have to do this, how are planes still flying?
Okay, as an interesting aside, I don't know if anybody remembers this, because honestly, I didn't remember this, but apparently about 10 years ago, if anybody likes country music, Brad Paisley. Brad Paisley flew into Saratoga Airport and it hit a tree. This plane came in to pick him up. Fortunately, nobody was killed, but it led to lawsuits, and then it led to Saratoga County Airport going and doing exactly what we're doing right now, because they were extremely lucky that nobody got killed. Are we gonna wait until somebody gets killed? This is a safety concern. It has been identified. We have been told, and therefore the landowners have been told. Is our answer really going to be, we're gonna wait till someone hits a tree and gets killed?
But my point is, in the meantime, planes are still coming.
Well, what's happening is that
I can-
it degrades some of the guidance, and this is where the problem comes in. So the NOTAMs get posted, and a NOTAM is a notice to airmen. And what happens is if there's an obstruction, there's some different NOTAMs on there that say, from this approach, there's a tree in the way. One of the runways has been downgraded to a non-night landings on IFR because there's too many obstacles in that area. It keeps building up to a point where it gets to be critical mass. Are we gonna wait till something bad happens to realize it's a problem?
So, and I can speak a little bit more to that. It's, you know, the FAA is continuously evaluating airports. The whole project has really piqued my curiosity from a regulatory standpoint. So I've kind of dove into the manuals a little bit, so I can educate myself on these questions. And I know I don't have all the answers, but I try to have as many as I can. And what I did look at, which if anybody wants to read it, it's here. So this is Advisory Circular 150-5300. And this is the July 14th, 1969 version, because I was kind of curious as to what the rules were that we're talking about in 1969. And I don't have the exact answer, but what I can tell you is today's version of this document's about 4 times as thick, which tends to happen with FAA documents. We get more and more complicated as the industry gets more and more complicated. It takes you to Federal Aviation Regulation Part 77, which is objects of fate affecting navigable airspace. This is also 1970-something version, was the only one I could find as far as historical data. What I'm getting at is that, you know, the policies have changed over the years since the airport was built. So we've got kind of a double-edged sword. We've got trees that are growing into the airspace, and also the definition of the airspace has changed. The 34-to-1 slope has remained pretty constant. However, the interpretation of some of the obstructions penetrating and what to do about them has changed. So I'm kind of a nerd with this stuff, but I quite frankly don't have the time to go through every single revision over the past 60 years and find out exactly where it changed, but it would suffice to say that somewhere along the line we've had trees grow and also policy changes at the FAA level. And at some point this came to their attention, and we're kind of in, for lack of a better term, a grace period, if you will, that they're saying, okay, we need to get this taken care of. We're going to make the degradations that Matt talked about, and if we can't get it taken care of, they're going to further degrade the airport.
When did you get this basically demand to do this? When did you get it from the FAA?
I believe that there was a letter sent to the city of Oneonta September 30th, 2015.
That sounds right.
So for 10 years, it's been
Yes.
out of compliance.
Yes, we've been out of compliance for 10 years. And I think that one of the things that changes is that we have some of the airport commissioners changed. We also realized that some of the navigational aids are not working. And we would like to bring those online, and the FAA has been saying, like, well, you can do that, but you have to do this first. This is the project that needs to be done first. It is mandatory. We have to do this. Of course, you know, nobody likes to do a project that upsets people. It's especially being a volunteer. We don't take any pride into this. This does not make anyone happy. What we are committed to is when we signed up to be commissioners, we looked at the things that we are supposed to do, and one of them is to promote the airport. And if we're doing that, then that means that we need to abide by these regulations. So this is the reason why we do. We have to do it, we're going to do it, and that's why we have this project.
I'd just love to ask a few questions.
Sure.
This is the deepest that I have ever thought about the airport in the 6 years I've been on the city council, so it's great to have the opportunity to ask you these questions. I was with Ms. Shaw. I was wondering about the exactly what came from the FAA. I just saw a letter. It's the first I've heard of this, that this quote unquote like needs to happen, right? And I'm putting that in like fake air quotes because my understanding is that every time that we take money from the FAA, we are indebting ourselves for a number of years. So in order to do this project, project that is being presented as necessary, we have to take FAA funds, which means we have to keep the airport going for 10 years, 20 years. Maybe you guys can answer that. That's part one of my question. The second part is the airport, as it stands, is not profitable. It has not been profitable, and in any of the years that I have seen the numbers for it. I know that our primary revenue from the airport is fuel sales and hangar rentals, and I don't know what tie downs are, but apparently it's that, so the plane doesn't float away. So, but it's sort of like a snake eating its tail, right? Like, in order to continue to sell fuel, we have to do the fuel farm upgrade, and the fuel farm upgrade costs money. So how much fuel do we need to sell in order to pay for the fuel farm upgrade to continue to sell fuel, to make money to pay for the airport? I'm not impressed with an increase in fuel because I think that there isn't enough fuel on Earth, I mean, in the city of Oneonta to make the airport profitable without expansion. But even that, I haven't been convinced. And so I guess, sorry, what I'm asking is, I'm sort of preaching. What I'm asking is, this feels like, it feels like we're at a precipice, right? Where if we continue to do this, we almost have no choice but to expand the airport in the promise of some future economic development. Because we will continue to owe money on it. We will continue to have to operate it at a loss without that. But even with the promise of expansion, I don't see that translating to economic development. The people who are coming to go to Cooperstown get here. Chuck Schumer could have gotten here. He did get here as it is, and I understand that there are some weather implications of that, but he would still come because the job corps is in Oneonta and he has a press conference scheduled here. What we're doing is making it more convenient for those people on the backs of the taxpayers. And so, and to the detriment of our neighbors, to echo what Jill was saying, while you all may not be our constituents, right now you're dealing with the city of Oneonta, and the representation of the city of Oneonta has been really disheartening from my perspective, and I'm sorry for that. So I would like to understand why we feel like this is necessary. What I'm hearing is that the consequence of not doing this work is that they will downgrade the airport, which to me does not sound like an awful thing, because in 40 years, oh my gosh, almost 60 years, I still think it's like 2001, it has not paid for itself. We have not sold enough fuel. We have not rented enough hangars. The fact that we need to replace hangars, that's so out of touch with the actions of the airport, and I understand you've expressed, and I can appreciate that you're here to promote the airport, but I have to think about the city as a whole. And there are a lot of things that this city needs, and like new hangars and continuing moving goalposts, it just doesn't serve my constituents in a way that feels tangible to me. And so I'm hoping you can speak to that a little bit, to how indebted we already are to the FAA, to the financial strength of the airport going forward as you see it, using real numbers, because I hope that you guys are familiar with those. I don't want to own a gas station that loses money every year. That doesn't seem like a good business venture for me. So I'm hoping to learn here from you while we're all in the room, and while I have, for the first time in my career, more awareness of what you guys have going on up there.
So I can answer some of those questions. First of all, like how much we're indebted to the FAA is, I don't know. And that's a fair answer, and that's a realistic answer, because that changes all the time. So we can go to the FAA and we can ask them for that number. We can certainly do that. If you would like us to do that, we can get you that number.
I'm curious, just to be clear, so that if you do that, I'm curious about our minimum required level of operations in order to remain compliant, and how long we would have to maintain those operations without taking a single dollar more of federal money.
I can get those answers. And then as far as profitability, no, it has not been profitable. However, I believe that any road in the city of Anianta is not necessarily profitable. It's paid for by taxpayer money, and that means that people can use the roadways to drive their cars on. An airport is a little bit different because not everybody owns an airplane. We established that earlier. But it is an important infrastructure that can bring economic prosperity to the area. The only way to truly find out what that will do is you close it down and you see what you have. And I can tell you, if you shut down the airport, you'll never have an airport again. That's
Isn't it true that this whole, by the time phase 1, 2, and 3 are done, that grant money being received from the FAA is going to equal $10 million? And who the hell is gonna pay that back but the people of the city of Oneonta and the taxpayers? Because this is going, if this happens, this clearing, that's gonna be the taxpayers that are also gonna be affected. Correct me if I'm wrong, in Milford, Lawrence, and Oneonta, because that's where the property's at. And who's gonna get reimbursed for all of that?
They don't, it's not, it's a grant, these are grants.
It still has to be paid back.
Tax dollars. No, it's a
We're all paying for it.
We get paid.
There's
No,
things
the
that-
FAA collects money from seats. This is, the FAA is kind of its own little deal. They collect money from every person who flies in this country. And the way they do that is they want the small plane traffic in the small airports. They don't want small planes to go to LaGuardia. They don't want small planes to go to JFK. They collect money from those seats and it goes into a big pool of money. And then their job is to go and get all the other airports and disperse that and help improve all those airports. Kind of like the way government entity wants to make sure everybody in your society is connected with people. They don't want the rural areas to be left behind. They want their stuff to be modern and functional. So these are grants. They're not.
Explain the grant.
I'm sorry?
Explain to us a grant.
The grant is that they will pay for these projects. It's not, we don't pay them back. You don't sign-
Totally, 100%.
90% is generally the rule of thumb. And then the state generally matches half of the other 10%. So most projects are 95%. This 2-year window, actually, there's a window once in a while where they'll pay 95%. And then the state matches 2.5%. So the projects become 2.5%. The reason that I believe one of the mayors about 10 years ago had the idea that they were gonna try to close the airport. And they made phone calls, Mark, you can speak to this probably, and they got a number back, and that was a big number. They paid for basically everything since that airport was built there. It's infrastructure, just like the parking garage, just like a road, just like anything else in a city, this is infrastructure. And I hope we can have the numbers. Greg had put together pretty much a 12-year baseline of what it's cost every year, both in capital and in operating, that we'd like to have for the next meeting, so you can get up to speed on what it actually is costing on a regular basis. But we're getting off into the weeds a little bit, trying to stay on the project if possible.
What about the,
You have that? Okay.
what about the homeowners that are affected? About the depreciation, especially Bill and I. I mean, our property's been depreciated big time. I mean, our house is on it, he's lived there 27 years, I've lived there 22 years. And then you guys want, or not necessarily you guys, the FAA, I will choose wisely to say, wants to come on our property, private property, and cut even more in a spot that is like huge to the whole meaning of our home.
Well, I mean, this stuff happens, and is it Katie? Is it Katie?
Yeah.
Katie? I mean, this stuff happens all the time in the city. If someone in the city has a tree that's gonna fall down on the sidewalk, or we don't just say, well, let the tree fall down on the sidewalk. The city sends them a letter and says, you need to remove that tree, or we're gonna come remove that tree, and we're gonna send you a bill. This is things that we do all the time for public safety. And honestly, the FAA doesn't have to step foot on your property to cut the trees. You could cut them yourself. You could replace them with something else. They're offering to say, we will pay for this. We will do this project. But the reality of it is, they just need the obstruction out of the way. No different than if someone in the city said there's a tree that's dangerous on Elm Street.
Yeah.
All right, correct me if
Sorry,
I'm wrong.
yeah.
When you're living in the city of Oneonta, you don't own the property, right? The city still maintains the property, I mean, owns the property. You can't just section something off, okay?
What do you mean?
As a property owner, you own the house that's on the property, but you don't own the property.
Sure you do.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
Yeah, you do. But you don't all own all the rights. That's what I'm saying.
So the people up by the airport own everything, including the rights.
Well, what this is about, this whole project is about, is that they need to get the navigation, it's called an navigation easement, is what it's called, which means the rights to the airspace that they need to be in. So it's not, no houses, it's not taking somebody's land, it's the rights to that airspace, wherever that invisible line is. So it's, and as far as the tree, I mean, I'm an advocate, whether or not anybody in this room believes it or not, I'm trying to pinpoint the FAA and say, well, what has to go and what doesn't have to go? Because that's what you all want to know. I get it. It's not a simple answer to get. It's not a very simple answer to get. We're trying to get there.
That's right.
Right, but it's not that simple. The process has to go down this path. The bottom line is, the obstacles, the hazard needs to be removed. What that entails is yet to be determined.
You could be doing all this clear cutting though, and then the FAA still won't give you the grant. They can still say no.
No,
Is that-
no, they approve, once the initial phase of the easements is acquired, then you go to the design phase, which is then you fly over again, you get the definition of what obstructions are in the way, and then they determine, that's the design phase. This needs to be cut, this can be left. Someone brought up the area, Gil, I thought you brought up the area where those trees were cut through where the wetland is going across the Wallace Road, right there. D. George Road, okay. Well, those trees, if you look on that initial map, you'll see a highlighted orange. And if you put those back online, you'll see it. Those trees in that particular area were up into that airspace.
There's a power line right there.
The power
You come
line
through
is
that
below
street,
that.
It's important, it's there though.
But it doesn't
It's
matter.
safety.
They're looking at a 34-to-1 airspace. If a guy hits the ground, they're all dead anyways. They're looking at the airspace that the planes glide through.
My concern
Okay.
is the environment. I don't think you guys are doing anything about concerning the environment.
And that's not, that.
No, it is the Oneonta watershed. That is the top of the watershed. If you turn that into a desert, you're destroying the Oneonta water. This is a big thing.
It is a
You
big-
guys ignore this.
No,
It's
we
the
don't.
water. Yes, you do.
No, we
Yes, you
don't.
do. I have experienced it for 20 years.
Okay, if you want,
Okay,
I can talk to that for a minute if you want. I'm unfamiliar with the project you're referring to, where they clear cut over there. I'm in the timber business. You don't have to file many things when you cut trees, because the definition when you're cutting trees is you're not disturbing the soils. The reason they got in so much trouble when they did that last project is because they started it at a time when it was frozen and the ground was solid, and they were supposed to just cut trees. And it rained, and it got nasty, and it got rotten, and then the soil got disturbed, and they had ruts 4 and 5 foot deep. That changes the game. Now it becomes a violation, because they went ahead and continued working when they shouldn't. That's why it turned into what it turned into. And you're right, they got fined, it was a problem, because what they were supposed to do was just cut trees and leave the ground undisturbed. I'm a logger, I deal with this all the time. There are jobs that get shut down because if it's wet or muddy, or you're gonna get runoff, you can't do it. You have to stop. You can't have water running into a stream.
And excuse me, before other people, excuse me, sorry, Jim. We have a question. This gentleman here has been waiting for a long time, so I would like to give him a chance.
So I have a degree from Embry-Riddle in aeronautical science, and I've been an airline pilot. I've been a pilot for 50 years. So, like you, I would have to go in to check the clearway boundaries and see if they've changed. But so we're talking about the existing runway, and then over here we're talking about a proposed expansion. But just talking about the existing runway, I'm quite sure that when they made that runway, the clearway and all those things were established, and and compliant. So the terrain hasn't changed, and the runway, I don't think has changed. So trees have grown up in the clearway. So those trees, certainly, I would have thought that it would have been the city's responsibility to trim them, and maybe they haven't done it, but, so the existing footprint shouldn't, you know, the clearing, the tree trimming we're talking about on the existing clearway and footprint shouldn't really affect the neighbors very much, because their property was already off the footprint of the existing clearway. So I know it's complicated, but I mean, that's my question really, is if the clearway, and those rules haven't changed too much, I don't think, in a while. Like you said, 69 or something. So if these people aren't really threatened by maintaining the infrastructure of the existing runway and the existing airport boundaries. So they would only be threatened mostly by the expansion of the runway.
Well, I'll answer that with not necessarily, for a couple reasons. One, we know that the trees have grown. We know that the policies have changed a little bit. To exactly what extent, I just don't have that information. And the engineers would have to look it up, and we haven't been measuring trees for the past 50 years, so I don't.
Yeah.
Off the airport, essentially what the FAA has done, as we've talked about, is they've come out to the airport, they've measured things using aircraft, and Mike Stevens was telling me that there was a guy out on the runway, and he had set an instrument up that optically looks out at that to clear that 34 to 1 slope. So okay, we've identified that, and these are obstructions that weren't previously in the path, but they are now. Okay, so we've got a maintenance item to look at. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, the expansion is a totally separate deal. As far as better or worse, I can't speak to, because if you just imagine that you are then moving that imaginary cone, that imaginary line out, it may reduce the impact on property owners. It may miss certain property owners that are currently affected. It'll be different. I don't know, I can't speak to it being better or worse, but certainly different. Probably affecting certain landowners less if we extended the runway.
If you extended it, certainly. But I mean, the existing footprint right now.
That's what we're looking at.
Yeah, I mean, really what the city is doing is sort of catching up on what they should have been doing all along.
Exactly.
And keeping the clearway where it's supposed to be, and making the fuel farm work, and making the bathrooms work, and the hangar maintenance and all that sort of thing. So that's the existing footprint.
Yes.
But the people are concerned because, well, you know, they took 40 acres of our land when I was a kid to build the airport. Gave us $4,000. And so I have compassion for the people that are going to be affected now, but I don't think they're affected very much by the existing footprint.
And to answer that is, and I hate to keep using the term "we don't know," but we don't know because we need to get the engineering done.
Sure, I get it.
And once we have the engineering done, and we're looking at different avenues of how we can get that best information. When I say different, I mean expedite. Because everybody wants that information, right? So we want to wait on the engineers. Is there stuff we can do? There's some emails going on about that. That's in our weekly and bi-weekly meetings. How can we get this information out? How can we expedite the information part of it? Because quite frankly, we just don't have it, because the engineering hasn't been done. The design hasn't been done. People haven't been out to do the exact measurements and say, okay, this group of trees, whatever it happens to be. A term that I keep hearing too is clear cutting. And I feel like there's a negative connotation with that. I can't sit here and say that it won't be clear cut, but I'm not going to sit here and say that it will be clear cut, because we don't have the data. We don't have the engineering done. We don't know which trees, how many trees, how high up, whatever the case is. The engineering has to get done before I can give you any information. So clear cutting is just.
The questions that we're posing to them is that where is the line between what can stay and what can't, and that's the clarification we're waiting for from them. Because we don't have it. Just like we have to say, because I want the answers to.
And basically, you're talking about cutting lumber on airport property, which is.
No, the airport property is pretty much done for now. We just did that. That's called the on-site process.
So I'm confused why there would be, and I get it,
Because the airport would be degraded.
well, no, I mean, but the regulation is the clear way. It's clearly defined the angle and the path and everything like that. So if it hasn't changed and it was compliant when it was created, the only thing that could have changed would be, I mean, the hill's
The
still
trees.
there, but I mean, the trees have grown up.
Right.
And so,
How about
Yeah.
environmental review?
That will be part of
process.
it.
Absolutely part of the process.
Mike, you also had a question?
First of all, I want to say thank you for giving us more answers than we've had previously, and thank you to all the neighbors for bringing all these concerns up. I'm thinking about next steps. There are a lot of unanswered questions. I know City Council is likely to talk about this in some form at our next meeting, September 2nd. I wonder if it's feasible to get any of these answers by that point, or what a process could look like to get these neighbors some of the answers that they're looking for.
I think it's reasonable to say we can reach out to the engineering firm and have a scope of a timeline. I don't know that we'll have the answers. In other words, I doubt that we'll have any engineering done to say, well, this group of trees, that group of trees. But what we have been talking about is the scope and the timeline of what it would take to have that information.
In all
Okay,
reality.
sorry, one follow-up question. And I think one thing that you're using the term clearway, that 34-to-1 slope, I mean, I looked at the plans today, and there's nowhere off the airport property where that slope is not above the ground surface. So I think what I've heard a lot of people asking, and you said you don't have an answer for it, and we don't know about individual trees, but one key question seems like to get answered is if a tree is an obstruction, whether the whole tree has to come down or whether it can be topped, because that makes a big difference to the landowners. You know, there's a big difference between, I mean, and I understand you, Pat, earlier, Matt, that some trees in the forest, you know, you cut off the top and you've got nothing left
You
but
have a stick.
pole, but that's not always the case, so that would be a key answer to the
Yeah.
question.
And that would be part of the negotiations with the property owner
But
on
I'm
what
just
the
saying
options are.
what we need is clarification what the FAA would require, you know, not specific to any individual tree, but overall.
Yeah, the
So-
FAA requires, so when you think of the FAA, just think safety. You know, they want the airports and the airways to be safe. So the FAA will require that the airspace be clear as far as the difference between topping the tree or taking the whole tree is a negotiation with the landowner and also with the engineering. Well, the engineering firm's going to make a recommendation on that. What makes the more sense, and environmentals absolutely plays a role in that. That's why we hire the engineering firm, is to do the environmental assessment and give us, you know, we need to let them do their work, essentially. You know, we need the information of what makes the most sense.
I put a request, hopefully other council members who are here would agree, but that as many answers as you can get to us in the next couple of weeks, and perhaps have, questions that you guys can't answer, to have consultant or an FAA representative or somebody who can answer some of those questions to come to speak with council, either at our full council meeting or at a subcommittee meeting in the next couple weeks, month. That would be valuable for all
I think
of
that's
us.
a reasonable request.
Yes, sir.
I've been listening to everything. I'm trying real hard to get my head around what the total public benefit is. We've discussed the cons to the environment, to our water supply, the clear cutting, the animals, all of those things. But the only thing I've heard here so far tonight is that we have a couple politicians that fly in. The week of Hall of Fame, we have a few baseball players fly in. is no public transportation up there. I used to fly from here to Newark and things, but that's not available anymore. You've got a group of hobbyists that use it. You're renting out space for people to store their planes, either local hobbyists or people that are storing their planes from down in the city where it's exorbitantly expensive. We're going through all of these, all of these permeations to try to make it nice for that very few set of people, where the rest of the entire town is at risk for a lot of different things. You've got to come up and sell this and make it so that people are using it, they're going places, there's travel, there's all of these different things that need to be happening. We don't have the businesses, like I said before, the colleges are going down, the hospitals are going down, medical's going down. There's not a huge transplant program here in Oneonta besides what somebody had said.
No.
I really think we need to see more benefit before we take on this entire risk and the ongoing obligations that the FDA demands year by year as they're changing everything and your packet gets bigger and bigger.
Yes, and I do believe that you may be correct in the colleges, the enrollment going down, hospitals. What are we going to do about it? How are we going to change this? That's the big question.
Is going to fix it? It's not.
You believe that it will not. I believe that it will. I believe that it will help. And I think New York State has also published papers online that actually collaborate with that say that airports do bring economic prosperity.
We've had the airports for a long time, and all we've seen was deterioration further.
There are
to make it better for a few people to have the benefit, and the rest of the population to be hurt by it.
Let me speak to that real quick, and then I'll get to you, Jim. I agree with Martine. It's a piece of the puzzle. It's not a cure-all. I happen to have one here. If you were to Google economic impacts of New York State airports and aviation, there's a lot of good data. This one was done by New York State Department of Transportation. There's also some studies done by the National Business Aviation Association, and so there is data out there. And if you just think about a minute, air travel in general, what has air travel, commercial aviation or whatever, what has it done and how has it changed over the past, I don't know, just pick a number, 50 years, and how much has it changed locally at Oneonta? And you're right, we haven't seen a lot of change. And what we want to do is bring attention to the airport and see how we can change it in a positive way. To call a spade, we're behind. The industry, the aviation industry, is moving. It's excelling. It's moving fast. And locally, we're playing catch up, is what we're doing. And I do believe that it will play a significant role in bringing job creators to the area. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, can I explain something to answer your question? It's a simple Excel sheet spreadsheet. No answer was made for the 34-to-1 glide path. Are they observable obstructions or are they clearance obstructions? To your point, maybe it's clear cut. Maybe they nipped top of a couple trees. We don't know. They don't know.
That's why we do the project.
Just a second.
Yeah, but that's why we do the project.
If it's going to be clear cut, however, the FAA comes back and says, nope, it's all to the ground. Now you're complying with the stormwater report that I supplied each of you, where that's got to be mitigated because you're within a half mile of your own water source. So it's a cost-benefit analysis. To do that, to comply comply with New York State and protect your water supply, now you need to impound and mitigate that water on site. Doesn't matter if the ground is disturbed or not. You have to. It's a forested area to a low grassland. That's what that stormwater report says. To do that on site, you need to take property, eminent domain, private property. This is after the fact of getting the easement to do the study. You said they could do LiDAR, but you want forced easement on these property owners. That's what it's called in condemnment law. It's a forced easement. We need the easement so we can do the study. Go fly it with LiDAR. Say that tree and that tree. You haven't, or they haven't, and they haven't given you answers. Back to the Excel spreadsheet. If they come back and say, that's it, you gotta clear cut it, or your airport is degraded, okay, fly a Cessna 172, a couple of helicopters, call it good, on site. And for perpetuity and then abandon the damn thing. Or you're going to be left as a city taking private property to impound stormwater in a different municipality, by the way, Milford, where you're running on reservoir. They're just numbers.
Okay, I gotta rebut that a little bit, Jim, because the list of assurances doesn't say degraded, it doesn't matter. You sign a list of assurances, all airports have these lists of assurances.
She's saying if you're dealing with FAA
And the list of
funds.
assurances, well, it was bought with FAA funds, it's always been FAA funds. They control 5,000 airports in this country. The list of assurances says you'll maintain it to the standards, safe standards, in all ways within your ability. It's not, they just say, well, we downgraded, we don't care. This one action leads to another action. It's not just gonna be okay. Just like if somebody doesn't maintain their house, eventually you condemn their house and there's ramifications for that. There are ramifications for this. The list of assurances has said the city will maintain it for public use and the standards. What they're doing is slowly taking away certain tools and telling us you need to fix this. And so then we pick this up, we're like, okay, this has been sitting here for a while, we need to fix this.
And ultimately a class action lawsuit because it wasn't done according to FAA guidelines.
Well, if that's the way it has to go, then that's the way it has to go. I mean, that's fine. I mean, like I
land
said,
acquisition.
this isn't us. I mean, we're not, I just wanna
If
reiterate.
they're asking questions of what they're getting involved in and they don't.
And that's
have
where
answers.
the town attorney can look at that, and this side can look at that. We're just here trying to do what we're supposed to do to get these things accomplished. And if someone says it doesn't need to be done, then it doesn't need to be done.
Why can't the FAA and the engineer be here at any of the meetings as long as this whole program and process is taking place?
We'll try to get the engineer to the next meeting.
And somebody from the FAA?
I cannot vouch for
Yeah,
that.
we could try, but they're very busy. It is hard to get a 30-minute Zoom meeting with the FAA.
They've had
There-
some staffing cuts.
There's been, so the,
Well, that's what the consultants are for.
Right.
That's why they themselves want these things. What they're saying is, you need to do this project. We'll pay you back. We'll even pay for your engineering and consulting and design work, but you need to do it. And that's what their basic message is to us. This is a federally controlled airport. You need to do these things. And so there's avenues for them to pay for that. But they're personally, those guys aren't coming on the ground doing it.
You know, maybe coming in and saying, okay, this tree needs to come down or this tree needs to come down, and not clear cutting, and not making us feel like we're being threatened and that our property's gonna be taken away, but yet, we still have to pay taxes on it, which is a crock of crap. But approaching it differently and having somebody completely different in Rochester, like I mentioned before, not to be repetitive, but if it was approached in a much different way, to say, listen, this is a future project, or this is a concern, come in and show us the trees. We choose who we have it done. We have it assessed before it's done, and then we have it assessed after it's done. But not allowing the FAA to come in and claim a certain chunk of our property that has always been ours, that we've always had in the family, or it's always been something that we've purchased and paid taxes on. And why is it fair for people to continue to pay taxes on a piece of property that the FAA is gonna claim? No.
Well, I mean, I don't have all the answers to that. What I would liken it to a little bit is, when NICEAG puts power lines across someone's property, they have an easement across that property. And then for the rest of the time, they maintain that easement. And one day they show up and they're mowing down trees underneath the power lines. You come home from work and you're like, what happened here? Their position is they need to control the airspace. And once they control the airspace, then you go on to determine what needs to happen to make that safe. That's where it all stems from. And since they didn't acquire that when they founded the airport, they're looking at it now and saying, you need to control this airspace. And that, now these trees are so big and so tall on these offset properties that we need to control that airspace. And then we will do what we need to do to make sure it's safe.
So if we maintain them ourselves,
I'm sorry?
99% of people in this room use electricity. And about 1 or 2% fly out of the only other airport. That's.
And you know, all I can say is I completely understand everybody's feelings. I would be upset. And I've said from day one, Jim, I've known you a long time. I introduced myself to everybody that I could. I'm not bringing this up. The truth of the matter is, it's been on the table. Nobody wanted to grab it because nobody wanted to deal with the controversy. I'm trying to say, this needs to be done. I'm here. I'll help what I can. I'll answer questions. I'll advocate the best I can. I don't need your trees. I'm not trying to kill your trees. I'm not trying to do that. I need to have this project done. And whether we like it or not, this is something that all over this country, there's thousands of airports that we all fly, wherever we fly, we are assuming that it's maintained so we can fly in there and not get killed.
so if we have to have trees cleared, we can hire our own loggers.
If they're out of the way, they're out of the way. That's the bottom line. I've said that from the first meeting. If it was me, I'd be taking charge, and I'd start taking care of what I could, but it needs to be out of the way. It's pretty, that part of it is pretty simple.
We just
How we
need the
get
more
there is
specifics.
complicated, I agree. How we get there is fairly complicated.
We need to have the more specifics.
Well,
That
and we're
tree or
trying,
that tree or that.
trust me when I tell you, it's a frustrating process, and I understand.
It's really hard to believe that you've hired an engineering consultant to do this, but you've had no correspondence or information from them that says specifically, or even you're not being CC'd on the letters that we're receiving that say eminent domain in them. I find it really hard to believe you haven't looked at any of that correspondence and you're sitting up there acting like you know nothing about this.
We were CC'd on the one letter.
Yes.
Was there more than one letter?
Yeah, but I've got one letter.
We've gotten multiple emails from Shannon Fisher from Passero, CCing Matt Nissen. None of you.
Right, well then we haven't had that.
But
Yep,
you
then we
hired
need to
them.
look into that.
The
Well,
city
this
has
is-
hired them.
Yes.
The process is, with this, and he needs to put we're gonna put the document back online, because apparently it was and it's not. So the main document that started this was generated and shows this area. The process is, you hire a consultant, an engineer, a consultant that does airports, and they're the ones who dig into this. They're the ones who hire sub-consultants, which are appraisers and surveyors, and they go through this process. I'm in a business all my life, but I haven't run airports all my life. I don't know a lot about that part. And those guys, you know, Justin flies. He knows a lot about flying planes. But we're coming up to speed on the stuff behind the scenes. That's why the consultants are there.
I'm not even pointing to you individually, I'm just saying the whole mismanagement of this airport, if I were the city, would be, sitting in this is my second airport meeting, and for the second time, I feel like it's the first time you guys have ever gotten together and talked with each other. It's like you don't even know how to run a meeting. I can't believe that the mismanagement has gone on. You haven't been compliant for 10 years. Where was the city 10 years ago when you were first having to be compliant? Why hasn't anything been done up until now? Now we're all behind, and you're like trying to push something, steamroll something forward, and not doing it in a very thoughtful way. You're showing up on people's properties and scaring people.
I'm not scaring people. I'm not gonna go on and
Do you
introduce myself.
want people to speak up and say that? Because multiple neighbors.
I introduce myself and say, here's my name and here's
showed
my
up
contact.
and invited them into.
Okay.
Saying this is gonna happen.
Okay, if you want, I'll introduce myself to anybody who doesn't know me. My name's
You can't
Matt.
introduce, but still bully people.
My name's Matt Kennedy. I got involved with the airport.
I'm bullied.
I got involved with the airport because I was invited to an airport commission meeting. The first meeting you're talking about was the first meeting I was ever at.
First meeting with you was when you showed up in my driveway and said,
Oh, no,
this is gonna happen, so you better
I've
do
known
something
Jim
about
for
it.
years. I've known
I know
Jim.
it's true, you came out
But the
with
first meeting that you saw me at the airport was literally the first meeting I was at one of the meetings.
Okay, so let's continue with, if anybody has a
I
question.
have a little bit of a concern now. I'm just following the train here, not to use that language, because that's been thrown at us already. But so you're saying that the Oneonta Airport is behind the times, right, with all of this? And so now we're catching up on 20 years of being behind the times. And so you're gonna come in, you wanna take our properties to get us up to speed. And the airport industry is changing leaps and bounds all the time, right? So when you clear cut our properties, and then in 10 years, horizontal glide paths aren't really a thing anymore. Now the airport is really using helicopters more, or they're using, like the battery powered planes that Len was talking about that this one wants to do. So now the damage is already done at that point. And so I'm just wondering, how forward thinking have people been about what are other options for the use of the airport that don't require this kind of intrusive eminent domain of our properties? As a commission, we've lived with the airport for 28 years, and up until now, it's been fairly harmonious, you know what I mean? Personally, the more I look into it, the more I wanna see it shut down, because I just see the waste of it all, and the imposition that it puts on taxpayers, as a taxpayer myself. So I'm just curious, as a commission, do you ever look at other options beyond just conventional, hey, let's make it bigger and get bigger planes in here? Are you looking at other ways that maybe the airport can be utilized that doesn't require this kind of invasive behavior?
Yeah, you had a couple things there, right now, I'll try to answer all of them. I keep hearing eminent domain. The only thing we have, the letter we have from Becerra doesn't mention anything about eminent domain. If somebody has one, I get it. Do you mind if I take this? Okay. We'll review that. This is the first I've heard. I've heard the word eminent domain. Okay. I've heard it being thrown around, but this is the first I've seen it. So that's new. So we'll look into that, we'll address that. Nobody wants to be taking property via eminent domain. We talked about the aggravation easements. The goal is to come up with a cooperative solution. That's what we've talked about since the start. So I'll kind of digress from that a little bit. As far as other options, electric helicopters, electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. I think they're a real possibility, but I don't see them replacing the fixed wing aircraft. I see them being a complement to fixed wing aircraft. Really even that technology, although they are in development, it's still a ways out for the range and reliability on those aircraft.
But there's drone schools and helicopter stuff.
Yeah,
There's
absolutely.
a lot of different ways the airport could be used. And just kind of like going back to these setbacks of what, right? With the degradation of the airport, right? That it could still be used. Maybe not to your follies, but it could still be used.
Are you talking about in case we don't do the obstruction clearance, the degrade? One of the options there would be a shorter runway. A shorter runway would mean no jet traffic. That would mean that we would have less operations, less revenue, which would increase the burden of the taxpayers to pay for the airport.
So you start to wind it down then? I'm just not sold at this point that what all of this is really worth the possibility of polluting the reservoir and taking all of our homes.
Well,
and property, because I know you talk about air rights and stuff. But how do you get to the air without getting onto our property and telling us what we can do with our property. So air rights is a nice way of putting it, but you're taking the rights to our property, is what it is.
You're taking a part of the rights.
And so, well, but it's limiting, so like our property values are gone at that point. If that's all you care about is property value, which is something, you know, for me generationally, I mean, that's all I have to give to my kids. So, I mean, it's like, I need you to really consider all of this. When you go through these projects, like, you're actually affecting human lives and families.
Yes.
And so you need to like really be thoughtful on this. Because this is not just like, this isn't just like follies for guys with airplanes. This is a lot bigger. And I don't buy the whole economic development part of this, I'm sorry. You can show me, you know, the thing you're citing from, it's like they're lobbyists for airport groups. So of course they're gonna show glossy photos of people standing next to airplanes. So I'm just, you know.
All right.
And I'm not,
Yeah.
you know, like I said, we've lived harmoniously with the airport for 28 years.
Yeah.
But this is like, I'm not buying it, I'm sorry.
Jenny?
I don't wanna discount anybody, but we've been here almost 3 hours, and there is another meeting at 7 p.m. So we're gonna have to wrap this up in 5 minutes or less.
I just have a question.
Go ahead.
For the audience that doesn't know me, I'm Virginia Lee, I'm the Director of Finance for the City of Leon. So, and because we have a contract for this project, do we have any control of the person that has been contacting the people? I understand that, and I apologize if this was discussed when we had to step out. For her to get reassigned to a different project, to have someone new to be able to communicate with the residents, because one thing that I do not tolerate is rudeness, and I'm wondering if you have any control over getting a new person assigned. And secondly, do you have any control of seeing the correspondence that goes out before it goes out, so it can be approved by the people that have to answer these people's questions?
So, the short story is yes to both, with a small limitation. We can't necessarily control that, but we can suggest it. We can advocate for that. If we feel the communication is not going well, we can absolutely be copied on the communication. And furthermore, before the initial letter went out, which, as I mentioned, is the only letter that I was aware of. I was not aware of the communication that you handed me. The original letter that went out, a draft copy was sent to the Airport Commission for approval. That's the one that everybody got. It was June 5th, I believe, June 5th or June 10th. First, yes, that's that one. And that, in my opinion, was a very well written, very polite, very professional letter, which was just essentially a letter of engagement saying we're going to be working with you on this project. So that was the first and last letter that the Airport Commission reviewed, and we can absolutely request to be copied on the communication.
You
And
can
that's
understand why that is not good, that you did not get it.
Well-
You hired these people and they're working in your name. Everything they send out reflects on you. You should have an up or down on what
yeah,
they're doing.
it will bring that up.
Especially when they're communicating
You know.
with your people.
Yes, we'll take that back. We now have one of the communications that we weren't aware of. As an airport commission, we do not appreciate rude language to any of the property owners. We don't condone that. So we will look into that and take corrective actions if needed.
Either way, it's an implied threat against the community. How about Teagle County? It's an implied threat.
If
2 years ago, could have put a for sale sign on, done whatever, left. Now, it's worth zero because of all this malarkey, plus the term eminent domain. You basically backed at least 10 families into a corner, along with, we don't know your water supply. Good luck. Seriously. I don't want to live in an area where we shit already used that word. We're the only species on the planet to do it. All good. All right, listen there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys are in the hot seat.